The afternoon sun hammered down on Highway 287 like the fist of an angry god. Heat rose from the asphalt in shimmering waves that bent the horizon into something liquid and unreal. The Texas Panhandle stretched in every direction, flat and merciless, the kind of land that swallowed men whole and spit out their bones decades later. Frank Dawson moved like a man walking through fire. Each step cost him something he could not afford to lose. His left arm wrapped around his wife's waist, holding her upright, holding her together. His right hand gripped her fingers, the same fingers he had held at their wedding 48 years ago. The same fingers that had typed letters to him in Vietnam when the jungle was trying to kill him, and hope was the only thing keeping him alive. The same fingers that had touched his face in the dark after nightmares about Da Nang had shaken him awake, whispering that he was home now, that he was safe. Now those fingers were swollen and broken. Martha's head lolled against his shoulder. She had stopped talking an hour ago, maybe two. Time had become elastic in the heat, stretching and contracting like something alive. Frank had stopped trying to measure it. All that mattered was the next step, and the one after that, and the one after that. His Marine training whispered in the back of his skull, count your steps, find your rhythm. Pain is temporary, death is permanent, never leave a man behind. But Martha was not a man, she was his whole world, and he was leaving her behind with every step because his 74-year-old body was failing, and there was nothing his will could do to stop it. Blood had dried on the side of his face from where his head had hit the fireplace brick. His vision swam at the edges. Concussion, probably. 3 ribs cracked on his left side, he was certain of that. Each breath felt like someone driving nails into his lungs. His lower back screamed where Cole had tackled him from behind. But he could walk, he could carry Martha, he could keep moving. That was all that mattered. A car appeared in the distance, coming from the east. The 18th car. Frank had counted each one. 18 cars had passed them in the last 9 hours. Some had slowed, most had not. None had stopped. He raised his free hand, not frantically. He was too tired for frantic. Just a simple gesture. A wave, a request, please. We need help, please. The car was a pickup truck, a Silverado, dark blue, maybe 10 years old, a rancher's truck. The kind driven by men who understood that the land was hard and help was a duty, not a choice. The truck slowed. Hope flickered in Frank's chest like a candle in wind. The driver was a man in his 50s wearing a Stetson and a pearl snap shirt. Their eyes met through the windshield. Frank saw the moment of recognition. The man saw the blood, saw Martha's swollen face, saw 2 old people who had been hurt and left to die. And he looked away. The truck accelerated, swung wide to pass them, put as much distance between steel and flesh as the road allowed. Frank watched it disappear. The candle went out. Somewhere in the distance, vultures circled, waiting. Martha's knees buckled. Frank caught her, but the motion sent fire through his ribs and he gasped. They both went down, knees in gravel, sun beating on their backs. The highway stretched empty in both directions. A black ribbon through brown, nothing. This was how it would end, Frank thought. Not in the jungle, not in combat, not in bed surrounded by children who loved him. On a roadside in Texas, abandoned by his own blood, while strangers drove past and pretended not to see. He had survived sniper school, survived 2 tours in Vietnam, survived 47 confirmed kills, and the weight of every single one. Survived PTSD and nightmares and the long, slow work of becoming human again. Survived building a ranch from nothing. Survived raising 3 children and loving a woman for half a century. And it would all end here because his son wanted money more than he wanted a father. Frank heard the sound of an engine, different from the others, deeper, a diesel rumble that shook the air. He did not turn, could not bear another rejection, could not watch another person choose convenience over compassion. The sound rewound, then it changed. The engine note dropped. Air brakes hissed like some massive creature settling down to rest. Frank turned. An 18-wheeler sat on the shoulder 50 feet back, hazards blinking. The cab door opened. A man climbed down, tall, maybe 6'2", 220 pounds of muscle gone slightly soft in middle age. Dark hair shot with gray. Tattoos on his forearms, military tattoos. The eagle, globe, and anchor of the United States Marine Corps. The man approached slowly, hands visible, non-threatening. His eyes moved over the scene with the quick assessment of someone who had seen violence before and knew how to read its aftermath. When he spoke, his voice was careful, gentle. "Sir, my name is Jake Morrison. I'm a former Marine. I'm not going to hurt you. Let me help." Frank tried to speak. His throat was sandpaper. The words came out as dust. "Water, please, my wife." Jake was already moving back to his truck. 30 seconds later, he returned with 2 bottles of cold water and a first aid kit. He knelt beside them, moving with the efficiency of someone who had done this before. "Slow sips," Jake said, helping Martha drink. "You're dehydrated. Too much too fast will make you sick." Frank drank. The water was the most beautiful thing he had ever tasted. It hurt going down his ruined throat, but he did not care. Jake pulled out his phone, dialed 911, spoke in short, clipped sentences. "Highway 287, mile marker 104, 2 elderly victims, assault and abandonment, possible heat stroke, requesting immediate medical response." While he talked, his eyes stayed on Frank. There was something in his gaze, something beyond professional concern. Recognition, maybe, or memory trying to surface. Jake noticed the Vietnam veteran cap on the ground where Frank had dropped it. He picked it up, studied the patch sewn on the front. Scout Sniper Instructor, Camp Pendleton, 1985 to 1995. Jake went very still. "Camp Pendleton," he said slowly. "Sniper Instructor." Frank focused on him through the haze of pain, saw the tattoos clearly now. USMC, the globe and anchor, and beneath it, dates, 1993 to 2006. "Gunny Dawson," Jake's voice cracked. "Frank Dawson?" Something shifted in Frank's memory. A young face, 19 years old, eager and terrified in equal measure, standing on the rifle range at Camp Pendleton 32 years ago. "Morrison," Frank whispered. "Jake Morrison, Nevada." Jake's eyes filled. "You trained me, Gunny. Sniper Fundamentals Course 93. You taught me the first rule." Frank's lips moved. The words came automatically, muscle memory from 10,000 repetitions. "Never leave a man behind." Jake nodded. His jaw was tight. "I left a man behind in Fallujah. My spotter, Danny Chen, hesitated for 3 seconds when the RPG came in. 3 seconds. He died and I lived, and I've been running from it for 20 years. He looked down at Frank and Martha, broken on the roadside. "I drove past you 20 minutes ago. Saw you in my mirror. Kept going because I was late for a delivery, and I told myself it was not my problem." He swallowed hard. "Then I heard your voice in my head. Every lesson you ever taught me. Semper Fidelis, always faithful. Not when it is convenient. Always." Jake stood, moved to Martha's other side, slipped his arm under her shoulders. "I'm getting you both in my truck," he said. "Air conditioning, more water. Then we're going to the hospital. And after that, we're going to find whoever did this to you. After that, we're going to—" "Our son," Frank said. The words were ash. "Our children did this." Jake's expression did not change, but something went cold behind his eyes. The look of a man who had killed before and remembered how. "Then we're going to make sure they answer for it." He helped Frank to his feet. Together, they got Martha into the cab of the truck. The air conditioning hit like a blessing. Martha made a sound that was half sob, half sigh. Frank climbed in beside her. Jake shut the door and walked around to the driver's side. Before he started the engine, he looked at Frank. "I'm not leaving you again, Gunny," Jake said. That's a promise." The truck pulled back onto the highway. Behind them, the place where Frank and Martha had nearly died grew smaller in the mirror. Ahead, the road stretched toward whatever came next. Justice, maybe, or just more pain. But they were not alone anymore. And for the first time in 9 hours, Frank allowed himself to hope. The truck hummed north toward Childress Regional Hospital. Jake drove with one eye on the road and one eye on his passengers. Martha had passed out, her head resting against the window. Frank sat rigid, staring straight ahead, holding his wife's hand. "Can you tell me what happened?" Jake asked quietly. Frank's jaw worked. When he spoke, his voice was flat, the tone of a man reciting facts because emotion would shatter him. "We have a ranch, 800 acres. Childress County, been in my family since 1889. My great-grandfather homesteaded it. My grandfather survived the Dust Bowl on it. My father raised cattle through the oil crashes. I built it back up after Vietnam." He paused, breathed carefully around his broken ribs. "My son Ethan wanted me to sign it over. Said it was for estate planning. Protection from medical bills. I said no. It's my land. I built it. I decide when I'm done with it. Jake's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He brought his brother and sister, all three of them, came to the house Thursday morning, demanded I sign. When I refused, Ethan grabbed Martha. I pushed him away. Then Frank's voice finally broke. They beat us, both of us, loaded us into Ethan's car, drove us out here, took our phones, our wallets, everything. Left us. How long ago? This morning, maybe 9 hours. 9 hours in 104-degree heat. At their age, with those injuries. Jake had seen men die in Iraq from less. Your son's name is Ethan, Jake said. Not a question, a statement, memorizing it. Ethan Dawson, he's 49, lives in Houston, works for an oil company. Frank turned to look at Jake. He's my son. I raised him, and he tried to kill me for money. The words hung in the air between them. Jake's phone rang, the dispatcher. He had been expecting this call. Morrison, where the hell are you? Billing's delivery was due at 6. The client is furious. You're 3 hours late and not responding to messages. I found 2 people on the highway, Jake said. Elderly, assaulted, abandoned. I'm taking them to the hospital. That's not your problem. You have a contract. You have an obligation. I have a greater obligation. If you don't deliver that truck right now, you're fired. Do you understand me? Fired. Jake looked at Frank, at Martha unconscious against the window, at the blood and bruises and broken faces of 2 people who had been thrown away like garbage. He thought about Danny Chen, about 3 seconds of hesitation, about 20 years of running. He was done running. Then fire me, Jake said, and hung up. Frank stared at him. You just lost your job for us. I lost my job for myself, Jake corrected, for the man I should have been 20 years ago, for the lessons you taught me that I forgot. He pulled into the hospital parking lot. Emergency room staff were already waiting outside, alerted by his 911 call. Orderlies with a wheelchair, nurses with practiced efficiency, a doctor who took one look at Martha's face and started barking orders. Within minutes, Frank and Martha were inside, being examined, being cared for. Jake stood in the waiting room, suddenly exhausted. His phone buzzed, text messages piling up. The trucking company, angry, threatening, confirming his termination. He deleted them without reading. A deputy sheriff walked through the doors, young, maybe 30, eyes that had not seen enough yet to be jaded. You the one who called it in? The deputy asked. Yes, sir. Jake Morrison. He shook the offered hand. Found them on Highway 287, mile marker 104. They've been assaulted, abandoned by their own children, left to die in the heat. The deputy pulled out a notebook, started writing. Names? Frank and Martha Dawson. He's 74, she's 72. They own a ranch in Childress County. Their son Ethan and 2 other children attacked them this morning over some property dispute. You need to talk to Sheriff Wade Tucker. He knows Frank. They're both veterans. The deputy's pen stopped moving. Frank Dawson, the Marine? You know him? Everyone knows him. He coaches youth baseball, built the new dugouts at the high school field with his own hands. His wife taught half the county to read. The deputy's expression hardened. And you're saying his kids did this? That's what he told me. Jesus Christ. The deputy looked toward the emergency room doors. I'll call the sheriff. He's going to want to handle this personally. The deputy walked away, phone already to his ear. Jake sank into a plastic chair. His body ached. Not from physical exertion, but from the crash after adrenaline. He had been driving for 12 hours before stopping. Had been awake for 20. Had just thrown away his career and had no idea what came next. But when he closed his eyes, he did not see Danny Chen's face, did not hear the explosion, did not feel the 3 seconds of hesitation that had haunted him for 2 decades. He saw Frank Dawson, 32 years ago, standing on the rifle range at Camp Pendleton. Young Jake Morrison, struggling with the fundamentals of long-range shooting. Frank patient, encouraging, demanding, teaching him that precision mattered, that discipline mattered, that honor mattered above all else. And Frank's voice, clear as day, cutting through the noise of the range. Morrison, a sniper's first rule, what is it? Never leave your spotter behind, Gunny. Wrong. A sniper's first rule is never leave any Marine behind. Your spotter, your fire team, your country. Semper Fidelis does not mean faithful when it is convenient. It means always faithful. Always. Do you understand me? Sir, yes, sir. Then live like it. When you are old and looking back, the only thing that will matter is whether you were there when it counted. Everything else is just noise. Jake had forgotten that lesson, had spent 20 years drowning in noise, the divorce, the estranged children, the endless highway miles that led nowhere. But today, for 3 seconds on Highway 287, he had remembered, and he had stopped. The emergency room doors opened. A doctor walked out, 50-something, Korean-American, kind eyes that had seen too much suffering and refused to look away from it. "Are you with the Dawsons?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am. I'm the one who found them. Dr. Sarah Kim, you probably have saved their lives." She sat down beside him. "Mr. Dawson has a moderate concussion, 3 fractured ribs, severe dehydration, and second-degree burns on his neck and arms. Mrs. Dawson has a fractured cheekbone, bruising to her kidney, heat stroke, and signs of internal bleeding. We're admitting them both. Mrs. Dawson needs surgery to stabilize the kidney." Jake felt his chest tighten. "Will she be okay?" "I think so, but another hour in that heat?" Dr. Kim shook her head. "I've treated heat stroke before. At their age, it's often fatal. You got there just in time." I almost didn't stop. Dr. Kim looked at him for a long moment. "My father was a Marine, Korea, 1951. He used to say there are 1,000 reasons not to help someone, but only one reason to do it, because it is right." She stood. "You did the right thing. Thank you." She walked back through the doors. Jake sat alone in the waiting room. The fluorescent lights hummed. Somewhere down the hall, a monitor beeped. The sounds of a hospital, the sounds of lives hanging in the balance. His phone buzzed again. This time it was not the trucking company. It was his ex-wife, Lisa. He had not spoken to her in 3 months, had not seen his children in longer. He answered. "Jake, what the hell is going on? Your company called me. Said you abandoned a delivery. Said you're fired. It's complicated. It's always complicated with you." Her voice was tight with old anger and older hurt. "The kids are asking about you. Emily wants to know if you're coming to her graduation. Brad wants to know if you even remember his birthday is next month. And now I have to tell them that you got fired again." "I didn't get fired for the reason you think." "Then tell me the reason." So he did. Told her about Highway 287, about 2 old people walking toward death, about Frank Dawson, who had trained him 32 years ago and taught him what Semper Fi really meant, about the choice to stop or keep driving, about finally choosing right. Lisa was quiet for a long time. "You gave up your job for strangers," she finally said. "Not a question, just trying to understand." "I gave up a paycheck," Jake corrected. "Not a job, just money. But if I had driven past them, I would have lost something I can never get back." "What?" "The ability to look at myself in the mirror." Another long silence, then Lisa's voice, softer now. "The kids miss you, Jake. They don't understand why you left. Why you're always on the road, always running." "I know. Maybe it's time to stop running." "Maybe it is." They talked for a few more minutes. Careful words, testing old wounds to see if they had healed enough to touch. When they hung up, Jake felt something he had not felt in years. Not hope exactly, but possibility. The doors opened again. Sheriff Wade Tucker walked in. Late 50s, weathered face, eyes that knew how to read a crime scene and a man in equal measure. He wore the uniform of Childress County Sheriff, but he moved like military. Marines, Jake guessed. You could always tell. Tucker's eyes found Jake, sized him up in 2 seconds. "You Jake Morrison?" "Yes, sir." "Wade Tucker, Sheriff. My deputy says you found Frank and Martha on Highway 287, 9 hours after they were dumped there." Tucker's jaw tightened. "Frank and I served together. Different units, same war. He pulled me out of a bar fight in Amarillo in 74. Probably saved my life. I owe that man everything." He sat down across from Jake. "Tell me exactly what happened." Jake told him. Everything Frank had said, the timeline, the injuries, the location. Tucker wrote it all down in a small notebook. When Jake finished, the sheriff looked up. "You know what you just told me? That's attempted murder, elder abuse, criminal abandonment. If Frank and Martha had died out there, it would be capital murder." "I know. And you're willing to testify to all of this?" "I am." Tucker studied him. "You're putting yourself in the middle of a family's ugliest moment. You know that, right? This is going to get complicated. Ethan Dawson is not some street thug. He's got money. He'll have lawyers. They'll try to tear you apart on the stand. Question your motives, your character, everything. Let them try." Tucker smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. It was the smile of a predator who had just found prey. "I like you, Morrison. You got spine." He stood. "I'm going to get statements from Frank and Martha. Then I'm going to pay a visit to Ethan Dawson and his brother and sister. All three of them are going to jail. I'll make sure of it. What can I do? Stay available. Get some rest. This is going to be a long fight." Tucker walked toward the emergency room. Jake watched him go. Then he pulled out his phone, scrolled through his contacts, found the number for the motel down the street. He had nowhere else to go, no job to rush back to, no home waiting. So he would stay here, in Childress, in this small Texas town where two old people had been thrown away by their children and saved by a stranger. He would stay because it was right, and because Gunny Dawson had taught him, 32 years ago, that when it mattered, you never left anyone behind. That night, Jake sat in a motel room that smelled of old cigarettes and industrial cleaner. The television played the local news on mute. He was not watching it. He was staring at the phone in his hands, at a photo he had not looked at in months. His daughter Emily, his son Brad, taken 3 years ago before the divorce, before the estrangement, before Jake had chosen the road over his family and convinced himself it was for their own good. They were smiling in the photo. He was not sure they smiled when they thought of him anymore. His phone buzzed. Text message from Lisa. "The kids want to see you. When this is over, come home. Talk to them. You cannot run forever." Jake stared at the message, started to type a response, deleted it, started again. Finally, he just wrote, "Okay." Outside, the Texas night pressed down, hot and still. Stars overhead that had watched this land for millennia and would keep watching long after everyone living on it now was dust. Somewhere in that night, Frank and Martha Dawson lay in hospital beds, battered but alive, betrayed by blood but saved by honor. And somewhere else, 3 children waited for consequences they had convinced themselves would never come. Jake set the phone aside, lay back on the bed, closed his eyes. Tomorrow would bring interviews, statements, the grinding machinery of justice. But tonight, for the first time in 20 years, Jake Morrison slept without dreaming of Danny Chen. He dreamed instead of a firing range, of a young Marine struggling to hit his target, of Gunny Dawson's patient voice teaching him that precision mattered, that honor mattered, that the only thing that truly mattered was being there when someone needed you. And when Jake woke in the gray light before dawn, he knew exactly what he was going to do. He was going to stay. He was going to fight. He was going to make sure that Frank and Martha Dawson got justice. Not because they were strangers who had become something more, but because it was what Gunny Dawson had taught him. And because, finally, after 2 decades of running, Jake Morrison had remembered how to stand still. 48 hours earlier, Frank Dawson had been sitting on the porch of the ranch house he built with his own hands, drinking coffee from a mug his granddaughter had painted at summer camp 12 years ago. The mug was chipped now, the paint faded, but Frank kept using it because it reminded him of a time when his family still came to visit. When Christmas meant a full table and laughter echoing through rooms he had framed and wired and finished himself. Those days were gone now, had been gone for years, truth be told. But Frank had not wanted to see it, had kept making excuses. They are busy. They have their own lives. They will come around. He understood now that he had been lying to himself. The sun was just clearing the eastern horizon, painting the Texas sky in shades of orange and gold. This was Frank's favorite time of day, the hour when the land was quiet and the work had not yet begun, and he could sit with Martha and remember why they had fought so hard to keep this place. 800 acres, Childress County, the Dawson Ranch. His great-grandfather had homesteaded this land in 1889, had filed the claim and broken the prairie and built the first house from timber he cut and hauled himself, had survived droughts and floods and the loneliness of empty plains. His grandfather had held onto it through the Dust Bowl, had watched the topsoil blow away and the cattle die and the neighbors give up and leave. But he had stayed, had planted windbreaks, had drilled wells, had believed that the land would come back if you loved it enough. His father had raised cattle here through the oil crashes of the 80s, had mortgaged everything, had worked 3 jobs to make payments, had refused to sell even when the banks came calling. And Frank had rebuilt it all after Vietnam, had come home with a Purple Heart and a Silver Star and nightmares that would not stop, had used his GI Bill to buy equipment, had worked dawn to midnight for 10 years straight, had turned a struggling cattle operation into something profitable, something sustainable, something he could pass to his children. Except his children did not want the ranch. They wanted the money it would bring when it was sold. Martha came out onto the porch carrying her own coffee. She moved slower than she used to. 72 years had taken their toll, but she was still beautiful to Frank. Still the woman who had taught English to veterans at the community college in 1971, who had seen past his 1,000-yard stare and the way his hands shook and had decided he was worth saving. She had saved him, no question about that. "You are thinking too hard," Martha said, sitting in the rocking chair beside him. "I can hear your thoughts from inside the house." Just remembering, the good times or the bad? Both. They sat in comfortable silence. 48 years of marriage had taught them that not every moment needed words. Sometimes you just sat together and watched the sunrise and trusted that the person beside you understood. Frank's phone rang. He did not recognize the number, answered it anyway. "Dad, it's Ethan." Frank felt his jaw tighten. His oldest son, 49 years old, successful on paper, empty somewhere deeper. "Ethan, what do you need?" "Why do you always assume I need something?" "Because you only call when you do." A pause on the other end of the line, then Ethan's voice, harder now. "I want to come up this week. We need to talk." "About what?" "About your estate, about planning, about making sure everything is protected." There it was again, the same conversation they had been having for 6 months. Ever since Frank had refused to sign the papers Ethan kept bringing, the papers that would transfer the deed into a trust controlled by the children. "I have told you before," Frank said, keeping his voice level. "I am not ready to discuss this." "You are 74 years old. Mom is 72. You can't put this off forever." "I am not putting anything off. I am simply not doing what you want me to do. This is not about what I want. This is about protecting your assets. Do you know what happens if you go into a nursing home? Medicaid takes everything, the ranch, the land, all of it. Gone. Is that what you want?" Frank set down his coffee mug very carefully. When he spoke, his voice was quiet. The voice he had used in Vietnam when giving orders that would send men into fire. "What I want is to live my life in peace, to make my own decisions, to be treated like an adult, not a child. Can you do that, Ethan? Can you give me that basic respect?" "I am trying to help you." "No, you are trying to control me. There is a difference." Ethan's anger broke through. "You are being stubborn and stupid. You are risking everything our family built, everything I am entitled to." "Entitled," Frank repeated. "That is an interesting word. I am your son. I have a right to know what happens to my inheritance." "Your inheritance, not my life's work, not my home. Your inheritance." "That is not what I meant, and you know it." "I know exactly what you meant," Frank said, and hung up. Martha was watching him with worried eyes. "How bad?" she asked. "Bad enough." Frank rubbed his face. "He is going to come up here. Push harder. He is not going to stop until I sign those papers or until one of us is dead." "What are we going to do?" "What we always do. Stand our ground. This is our land, our home. We built it. We decide what happens to it." Martha reached over and took his hand. Her fingers were thin now, fragile, but her grip was still strong. "I'm scared, Frank." He wanted to tell her there was nothing to be scared of, that their children would never truly hurt them, that blood meant something, family meant something. But he could not lie to her, not after 48 years. "I am scared too," he admitted. They sat together and watched the sun finish its climb. The day grew hot, the work called, but they sat a little longer, holding hands, knowing that something was coming and there was nothing they could do to stop it. 2 days later, Ethan arrived, but he did not come alone. Frank was in the barns checking on a mare that was due to foal any day when he heard the vehicles pull up. Plural, not just Ethan's black Escalade, 2 other cars. He walked out into the sunlight and felt his stomach drop. Victoria, his middle daughter, 47 years old, divorced twice, selling real estate in Austin and barely making ends meet. She looked nervous, would not meet his eyes. And Cole, his youngest, 44, unemployed again, drinking again from the smell of him. He had promised he was sober. 3 years, he had said. Frank had wanted to believe him. All 3 of his children, standing in a line in front of his house, united front. Martha came out onto the porch. She saw them and stopped. Frank saw fear flash across her face before she hid it behind the smile she used for company. "This is a surprise," Frank said, keeping his voice neutral. "To what do we owe the pleasure?" Ethan stepped forward. He was dressed for business, suit and tie in the middle of ranch country. It was a statement, a reminder that he had left this place behind and become something more successful than his father. We need to talk, Dad, all of us, about the future. The future, Frank repeated. Or the ranch? They are the same thing. Frank looked at Victoria, at Cole. You two agree with this? Victoria shifted uncomfortably. Daddy, we are just worried. Ethan explained the legal risks. If something happens to you, if you need long-term care, the state could take everything. We are trying to prevent that. By taking it yourselves first? That is not fair, Cole said. His words were slightly slurred. Definitely drinking. We are your kids. We are not trying to steal from you. Then what are you trying to do? Ethan pulled out a folder, the same folder he had brought 6 months ago, the same papers Frank had refused to sign. We had this drawn up by an estate attorney. It creates a revocable living trust. You transfer the ranch into the trust. You keep life estate rights. You can live here as long as you want, but the asset is protected. When you pass, it transfers to us without probate. Clean, simple, smart. And if I sign this, who controls the trust? We do, all three of us, jointly. So I transfer my property to you, keep the right to live here until I die, and you control everything else. That is how trusts work, Dad. Frank looked at the papers, at his children's faces, at the careful way they were all watching him, waiting. This was a setup. They had planned this together, coordinated their arrival, probably rehearsed what they would say. He wondered how long they had been plotting against him. No, Frank said simply. Ethan's jaw tightened. Dad, you are not thinking clearly. My mind is perfectly clear. You are 74 years old. Mom is showing signs of forgetfulness. You cannot handle this property anymore. Last month, you forgot to pay the feed bill. The month before that, you left a gate open and lost 6 head of cattle. I found those cattle, and the feed bill was paid late because I was in the hospital for my back, which you would know if you had bothered to visit. We are busy. We have our own lives. Then live them and let me live mine. Victoria stepped forward. Her eyes were red. She had been crying, probably had been for days. Daddy, please. I need this. Brad is trying to take the kids from me. He says I cannot provide for them properly. If I could show the court that I have family assets, that I am part of a trust, it would help my case, please. Frank felt his heart crack. His daughter was in pain, real pain, and she was asking for help. But this was not help. This was theft dressed up in legal language. I am sorry about your custody battle, Frank said gently. I truly am, but I cannot give you the ranch to solve it. That is not how this works. You could if you wanted to, Victoria said. You just do not care enough about your grandchildren to help. The words were designed to wound. They succeeded. Martha came down from the porch. She moved to stand beside Frank, shoulder to shoulder, the way they had stood together for 48 years. Children, she said softly, please, this is our home. We are not ready to give it up. Can you understand that? Ethan's expression went cold. What we understand is that you are being selfish. You are sitting on almost $5 million in land equity. You do not need that money. You are going to die soon anyway. But we need it now. We have lives, problems, responsibilities, and you are hoarding it like some kind of dragon sitting on gold. Frank felt Martha flinch beside him. Get out, Frank said quietly. What? You heard me. Get out of my house, all of you, right now. We are not leaving until you sign these papers. Then I am calling the sheriff and having you removed for trespassing. Ethan took a step forward. There was something in his eyes Frank had never seen before. Something dangerous. You think you can threaten me? Old man, I have lawyers. I have resources. I can have you declared incompetent. I can take this ranch through the courts. I can make your life hell. You are already making my life hell, Frank said. At least if you do it through lawyers, I will not have to look at you. Ethan's hand shot out, grabbed Martha's arm, yanked her forward. Sign the papers, or I swear to God I will make you regret it. Frank moved without thinking. 74 years old, but still a Marine, still trained, still capable. He shoved Ethan away from Martha with both hands, hard enough to send his son stumbling backward. Do not touch her, Frank said. His voice was ice. Ever. That was when everything went to hell. Cole came at Frank from the side, wrapped him up in a tackle. They went down together. Frank's back hit the ground and pain exploded through his spine. Victoria was screaming, high and shrill, telling them to stop, but she did not move to help. Ethan regained his balance. His face was purple with rage. He came back at Frank. Cole rolled away. Ethan's fist connected with the side of Frank's head, once, Twice, the world went white. Martha threw herself over Frank, trying to protect him with her own body. Ethan shoved her away. She hit the porch railing. Her face struck wood. Frank heard the crack of bone breaking. He tried to get up, could not. His vision swam, blood in his mouth, ribs screaming. Cole was crying now, backing away. Ethan, stop. Jesus Christ, stop. But Ethan did not stop. He kicked Frank in the ribs. Once, twice, 3 times. Each impact drove the air from Frank's lungs. Then hands were lifting him, dragging him. He tried to fight, but his body would not respond. Concussion. Had to be. Everything was blurry and wrong. They put him in the back of the Escalade, Martha beside him. She was unconscious. Her face was purple and swollen, blood on her white hair. Frank tried to speak, to beg them to stop, to ask them why, but no words came. The car started moving. Frank's last view of the ranch was through the rear window. The house he had built, the barn he had raised, the land 4 generations of Dawsons had bled for. His son was taking it all, and Frank could do nothing but watch it disappear. The drive lasted 40 minutes, maybe longer. Frank could not keep track. Time moves strangely when you were dying. When your wife lay unconscious beside you and your son sat in the driver's seat and nothing made sense anymore. They passed places Frank knew. The gas station where he had taught Ethan to pump gas when the boy was 12. The school where Victoria had been homecoming queen. The church where they had all been baptized. Familiar landmarks of a life that was ending. Ethan turned onto Highway 287, headed south, away from town, away from help. Victoria was in the passenger seat. She kept turning around, looking at Frank and Martha. Her face was pale, shocked. Ethan, where are we going? She asked. Shut up. They need a hospital. Mom is not breathing right. I said shut up. Cole was in the 3rd row, behind Frank. He was shaking. Frank could feel the tremors through the seat. This is wrong, Cole whispered. Ethan, this is so wrong. Then you should have thought of that before you helped. I did not know you were going to actually hurt them. I thought we were just going to scare them. Plans change. Ethan's phone rang. He answered it hands-free. A woman's voice filled the car. Professional. Clipped. Mr. Dawson, this is Liberty Mutual Investigations. We have been trying to reach you regarding your late wife Rebecca's policy. We need to schedule another interview. Our forensic analysis of the vehicle has raised some questions about the brake system failure. Ethan hung up. His hands were white on the steering wheel. Victoria stared at him. What was that about? Nothing. That was about Rebecca, your first wife, the one who died in the car accident 5 years ago. It was an accident. Brake failure. I told you that. Then why are they investigating? Ethan did not answer. Frank's mind worked slowly through the concussion fog. Rebecca, Ethan's first wife. Sweet woman. Quiet. She had died suddenly. Car crash on I-10 outside Houston. Brakes failed on a hill. She went off the road at 70 miles per hour. Ethan had collected $500,000 in life insurance. Frank had suspected, had never said anything, had told himself he was wrong, that his son was not capable of murder. He understood now that he had been lying to himself about that too. Ethan pulled off the highway, middle of nowhere, nothing but scrub brush and flat earth in every direction. The kind of place where you could scream and no one would hear you. He put the Escalade in park. Get out, he said. Victoria's voice was small. Ethan, please. Get them out of the car. Now. Cole opened the rear door. His hands shook so badly he could barely work the latch. Together, he and Victoria pulled Frank and Martha out, laid them on the gravel shoulder. The sun was directly overhead now. No shade, no mercy. Frank tried to stand, managed to get to his knees before his vision whited out and he fell again. Ethan stepped out of the driver's seat, walked around, looked down at his parents like they were roadkill. He was deciding whether to swerve around or just drive over. You should have signed, Ethan said. His voice was flat, empty. This could have been easy, clean, legal, but you had to be stubborn. He reached down, took Frank's wallet, took Martha's purse. No phones, he said to Victoria and Cole. Make sure they have nothing. Cole patted down Frank's pockets, pulled out his phone. His hands were shaking so hard he dropped it. Had to pick it up twice. Ethan, they will die out here, Cole said. It is 104 degrees. They have no water, no way to call for help. I know. The words hung in the air. Victoria made a sound, half gasp, half sob. You are going to kill them. That is what this is. Murder. It is self-preservation. If Liberty Mutual proves I tampered with Rebecca's brakes, I am going to prison. I need money to disappear. The ranch gives me that, but only if they cannot testify against me. Against you for what? Victoria demanded. What did you do to Rebecca? Ethan turned to look at her. His eyes were dead. What do you think I did? Victoria stepped back, like she was seeing him for the first time, seeing what he really was. Cole was crying openly now. I cannot do this. I cannot be part of this. You already are, Ethan said. You helped load them in the car. You helped bring them here. You are an accessory to everything I do from this point forward. So you can either shut up and get in the car, or you can stay here with them. Cole looked at Frank, at Martha, at his parents broken on the roadside. Then he got in the car. Victoria hesitated. For one moment, Frank thought she might stay, might choose them over her brother, might remember that she had a soul. But she got in the car too. Ethan looked down at Frank one last time. You taught me to be strong, he said, to take what I wanted, to never back down. I am just doing what you taught me, Dad. I never taught you this, Frank managed to say. The words came out as blood and dust. You taught me that weakness gets punished, that the strong survive. Well, I am surviving, and you are weak. He turned toward the car, paused. Good luck, Dad. Semper Fi or whatever bullshit you Marines say. He got in the Escalade, started the engine, pulled back onto Highway 287. The car disappeared into the heat shimmer, into the south, into nothing. Frank and Martha lay on the gravel. The sun beat down. Vultures appeared in the distance, riding thermals, waiting. This was how it would end. Not in combat, not with honor, but discarded by his own blood, left to die like garbage. Frank thought about Vietnam, about the men he had killed, about the ones he had saved, about whether any of it had mattered if this was where it led. He thought about Martha, about 48 years together, about the children they had raised, about the ranch they had built. All of it ending here. Martha's eyes fluttered open. She looked at him. Her face was so swollen he could barely see her eyes. Frank, she whispered, I am here. Are we dying? He wanted to lie, to tell her help was coming, that they would be fine. But he had never lied to her before. He would not start now. Maybe, he said, but we are together. We have always been together. She tried to smile, winced at the pain. I love you, she said. I love you too. They lay in the gravel and waited, for help that would not come, for death that would, for an end to the pain. The first car passed 20 minutes later, slowed, kept going. The second car, 10 minutes after that, did the same. The third, fourth, fifth, all slowed, all left. Frank stopped counting after 10, stopped hoping after 15. By the time Jake Morrison's truck appeared in the distance, Frank had stopped believing that anyone would stop at all. But the truck did stop. The air brakes hissed. The door opened. And a voice Frank had not heard in 32 years said the words he had taught 1,000 Marines but had forgotten himself. Never leave a man behind. Frank looked up at Jake Morrison, at the student who had remembered the lesson when the teacher had forgotten. And for the first time in 9 hours, Frank Dawson allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, he might survive this after all. Not because he deserved to, but because someone had chosen to stop. Because honor still meant something. Because Semper Fi was not just words. It was a promise. And Jake Morrison, against all odds, against all logic, had kept it. The world went dark after that. Frank felt hands lifting him, felt cool air, felt water on his lips. And he let himself fall into unconsciousness knowing that Martha was safe, that they had been found, that the road had ended not in death but in salvation. When he woke again, he was in a hospital bed. White walls, beeping monitors, the smell of antiseptic and floor wax. Martha was in the bed beside him, alive, breathing, broken, but alive. And sitting in the chair between them, head bowed, hands clasped, was Jake Morrison. Waiting, the way Marines always waited for their brothers to wake up. Frank tried to speak. His throat was sandpaper. Jake's head came up. His eyes were red. Gunny, he said, you are awake. Thank God. How long? 18 hours. They did surgery on Martha, fixed her kidney. She is going to be okay. So are you. Frank looked at the man who had saved them. The boy he had trained 3 decades ago, who had grown into someone worth saving himself. Thank you, Frank said. Jake shook his head. You do not get to thank me. You taught me what I did. All I did was remember. You remembered when it mattered? So did you. You held on, kept Martha alive, survived long enough for someone to find you. Frank closed his eyes, felt tears on his face. The first tears he had cried since Vietnam. My son tried to kill me, he said, my own son. I know. For money, for land, for things that do not matter. I know. How do I live with that? How do I accept that I raised someone capable of that? Jake was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was gentle. You did not raise him to be that way. He chose it. That is on him, not you. All you can do now is make sure he answers for it. How? By fighting. By testifying, by making sure the world knows what he did. Jake leaned forward. Sheriff Tucker arrested all three of them this morning. Assault, elder abuse, attempted murder. The DA is pushing for maximum sentences, but they need you to be strong enough to fight. Frank looked at Martha, at her swollen face, at the machines keeping her alive. Then he looked at Jake. I will fight, Frank said. Not for me, for her, for every other parent whose children see them as obstacles instead of people. I will fight. Jake smiled. It was a warrior's smile, hard and certain and without mercy. Good, because you are not fighting alone, Gunny. I am with you, all the way, until this is done. He stood, reached out his hand. Frank took it. And in that moment, in that hospital room in small-town Texas, two Marines made a promise. To stand together, to fight together, to make sure that blood betrayal did not go unpunished. Semper Fidelis, always faithful, not to family, but to honor. The fluorescent lights of Childress Regional Hospital hummed with the kind of sound that burrowed into your skull and stayed there. Jake Morrison had been sitting in the same plastic chair for 6 hours. His back ached. His eyes burned. Coffee from the vending machine sat cold in a paper cup beside him, untouched for the last hour. He did not move. Marines learned patience in strange places, in hide sites waiting for targets, in ambush positions watching roads, in hospitals waiting for brothers to come back from surgery. The emergency room doors swung open. Dr. Sarah Kim walked out. She looked tired, the kind of tired that came from holding lives in your hands and knowing that sometimes, no matter how hard you tried, they slipped through your fingers anyway. Her eyes found Jake. She walked over, sat down beside him without asking. They are stable, she said. No preamble, no softening, just facts. Jake appreciated that. How bad? Mr. Dawson has a grade 2 concussion, 3 fractured ribs on his left side, severe dehydration, second-degree sunburn on his neck and arms. His kidney function is compromised from the dehydration, but it should recover with fluids and time. She paused, looked down at her hands. Mrs. Dawson is worse. Fractured orbital bone. Her left cheekbone is shattered. She has bruising to her left kidney that caused internal bleeding. We had to do emergency surgery to stop it. She also has heat stroke. Her core temperature when you brought her in was 105.3. Another 30 minutes and we would have been looking at permanent brain damage or death. Jake closed his eyes. 30 minutes. The difference between stopping and driving past had been 30 minutes of someone's life. Will she be okay? I think so. She is strong, stronger than she looks. But recovery will take months, maybe longer at her age. The psychological trauma alone. Dr. Kim shook her head. To be attacked by your own children, I cannot imagine. Can I see them? Mr. Dawson is awake, asking for you actually. Mrs. Dawson is still sedated from surgery, maybe in a few hours. Jake stood, followed Dr. Kim through the doors into the emergency department. The smell hit him immediately. Antiseptic and blood, and something underneath that might have been fear or might have been death. Hospitals all smelled the same. Iraq, Texas, anywhere humans tried to hold back the dark. Frank Dawson lay in a bed in the corner of the ward. Monitors beeped around him. An IV dripped clear fluid into his arm. His face was a mess of bruises, purple and yellow and black. His eyes were bloodshot, but they were open, alert, tracking Jake as he approached. Gunny, Jake said quietly. Frank tried to smile, winced at the pain. I keep telling the nurses to stop calling me that. Been retired 30 years, but the title sticks. Some titles you earn, you do not get to give them back. Frank studied him, really looked at him. You stayed. I told you I would. You lost your job. Jobs are easy to find. Clear conscience is harder. Frank's eyes went to the empty bed beside him. The one waiting for Martha when she came out of recovery. They had to operate on her kidney, Jake said gently. Dr. Kim says she will be okay, but it was close. Frank's jaw tightened. He said nothing for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. In Vietnam, I carried a wounded Marine 3 miles through jungle. Got shot twice doing it. Took shrapnel in my leg. But I got him out, got him to the medevac. He lived. Frank looked at Jake. I did that for a stranger, a kid from Ohio I had known for 2 weeks, and my own son left me to die on a highway for money. How do I make sense of that? Jake pulled up a chair, sat, leaned forward with his elbows on his knees. You do not, he said. Some things do not make sense. You just survive them. I raised him, fed him, taught him, loved him. Where did I go wrong? You did not go wrong, he did. That is on him, not you. But I must have done something, must have failed him somehow. Good people do not just turn evil. Jake thought about that, about the Marines he had known who came back from war different, about the ones who did not come back at all, about the thin line between good and evil, and how easy it was to cross without noticing. My father was a drunk, Jake said. Beat my mother, beat me and my sister. I joined the Marines to get away from him, to become something different. But sometimes I look in the mirror and I see his eyes looking back. The anger, the violence. It is in there in my blood. I chose not to be him. Every day I choose. But the choice is hard. He met Frank's gaze. Your son made different choices. Maybe he had reasons. Maybe he is broken in ways you cannot see. But that does not make it your fault. You gave him every chance to be good. He chose not to take it. Frank was quiet for a long time. Outside, thunder rumbled. A summer storm rolling in from the west. The kind that turned the sky green and dropped hail the size of golf balls. Sheriff Tucker was here earlier, Frank said. While you were in the waiting room, he took my statement. Martha's too, before the surgery. He says he is going to arrest Ethan, Victoria, Cole, all three of them. Good. He also said it is going to be hard to prove. No witnesses except us. Our word against theirs. Their lawyers will say we are confused, that we fell, that we are old and do not remember things right. They left you on Highway 287, took your phones and wallets. There will be evidence. Maybe, maybe not. Wade says cases like this, they fall apart all the time. Juries do not want to believe children would do this to their parents. They find reasons to acquit. Jake leaned back. The chair creaked under his weight. Then we make sure the evidence is so strong they cannot ignore it. We? You think I am leaving? I told you, Gunny. I am with you all the way. Frank's eyes filled. He blinked hard, turned his head away. Marines did not cry, even when they wanted to. You have your own life, Frank said. Your own problems. You do not owe me this. I owe you everything. You taught me what it means to be a Marine, what honor looks like, what sacrifice costs. If I walk away now, then everything you taught me was wasted, and I will not let that happen. The door opened. Sheriff Wade Tucker walked in. He was not in uniform, just jeans and a work shirt and boots that had seen better days. But he moved like law, like someone who carried authority in his bones, whether he wore a badge or not. Frank, Wade said, nodded to Jake. Morrison. Sheriff. Wade pulled up another chair, sat down with a sigh. He was carrying a folder, thick, already filling with paper. I have been making calls, Wade said. Talk to the DA, talk to the state police, talk to some people in Houston who know Ethan. He opened the folder. We have got enough to arrest all three of them. Assault, battery, elder abuse, criminal abandonment, possibly attempted murder, depending on how the DA wants to charge it. What about evidence? Frank asked. That is where it gets interesting. Wade pulled out a map. Highway 287, a red X marked the spot where Jake had found them. I went out there this afternoon. Found blood on the shoulder, gravel disturbed where you were lying, tire tracks from a large SUV, Escalade most likely based on the tread pattern. He pulled out another document, phone records. I subpoenaed Ethan's cell phone data. GPS shows his vehicle at your ranch Thursday morning from 10:15 to 11:30. Then traveling south on 287, he stopped at mile marker 104 for approximately 6 minutes, 11:47 to 11:53. That is where Morrison found you. Jake felt something cold settle in his chest. 6 minutes. Ethan had spent 6 minutes dumping his parents on the side of the road and stripping them of any way to call for help. After that, Wade continued, he drove back to your ranch, stayed for another 40 minutes, then headed south to Houston, arrived at his house around 6 p.m. What was he doing at the ranch for 40 minutes? Frank asked. I was wondering that too, so I got a warrant. Searched the place this afternoon. Wade pulled out photos, crime scene photos. Found blood on your living room floor, furniture knocked over, your wife's purse in the kitchen drawer, Your wallet in the trash. He came back, Frank said slowly. After he left us, he came back to the ranch. To clean up, to stage it, to remove evidence. But he did a sloppy job, probably panicked, left enough behind that we can prove assault occurred in your home. Wade leaned forward. Here's what I think happened. They came to pressure you about signing over the ranch. It turned into a fight. They beat you. Maybe they planned it. Maybe it was heat of the moment. Either way, once it was done, Ethan made a decision. He could call an ambulance, face charges, lose everything, or he could get rid of you. Make it look like you wandered off, had an accident, died of exposure. The words hung in the air. So he loaded you in his car, Wade continued, drove you out to the middle of nowhere, dumped you, took anything you could use to call for help, then went back to your ranch to clean up the evidence and create an alibi. But he did not count on Jake, Frank said. Wade looked at Jake, something like respect in his eyes. No, he did not count on someone actually stopping. Most people would not have. Ethan probably figured by the time anyone found you, you would be dead. Heat stroke, dehydration. At your age, it would look natural. Tragic, but natural. Except I am not dead, Frank said. No, and that changes everything. Because now we have living victims. We have testimony, we have evidence, and Ethan Dawson is going to prison. Frank closed his eyes, breathed carefully around his broken ribs. When? He asked. Tomorrow morning. I am picking him up at his house in Houston. Victoria lives in Austin. Local PD will grab her. Cole is still in town, staying at the Motel 6. I will get him tonight. He will lawyer up, Frank said. Ethan has money. He will hire the best. Let him. We have the evidence. We have you, and we have something else. Wade pulled out another document, this one official looking, stamped and signed. This came in an hour ago from Liberty Mutual Insurance. You know anything about that? Frank frowned. Liberty Mutual? That is who had Ethan's wife's policy. Rebecca, she died 5 years ago. Car accident. Brake failure, right? That is what Ethan said. Wade's expression went hard. Liberty Mutual has been investigating that accident for the last 18 months. They think it was not an accident. They think someone tampered with her brakes. The room went very still. Ethan collected $500,000 when Rebecca died, Wade said. Paid off massive gambling debts. Got his life back on track. Liberty Mutual thinks that is suspicious. They exhumed Rebecca's car from the junkyard, had a forensic team go over it, found traces of acid in the brake fluid. That does not happen naturally. Jake felt his hands curl into fists. He murdered his wife. They cannot prove it yet, but they are close. And here is the thing. When I talked to their investigator this morning, he told me something interesting. He said he interviewed Frank last year, asked him if he thought Ethan was capable of killing Rebecca. Wade looked at Frank. You told him yes. You said you suspected it, but had no proof. Is that true? Frank's face had gone pale. I did. Rebecca called me a week before she died, said Ethan was acting strange, angry about money, secretive. She was scared of him. Then the accident happened and I wondered, but I had no proof. And he is my son. I wanted to believe he was innocent. The investigator thinks Ethan knew you suspected him, thinks that is why he wanted you to sign over the ranch. Not just for the money, but because if Liberty Mutual files charges, you become a witness, and witnesses can testify. Understanding dawned on Frank's face. Horror followed. He was not trying to steal my ranch, Frank said. He was trying to make sure I could not testify against him for murdering Rebecca. That is my theory. And if I am right, this was not a family dispute that got out of hand. This was premeditated murder. He tried to kill you to cover up killing his wife. The thunder outside was louder now. Rain began to hit the windows, heavy, insistent, the kind of rain that washed things away. Wade stood, gathered his papers. Get some rest, Frank, both of you. Tomorrow is going to be a long day. He looked at Jake. You staying here? Yes, sir. Good. Keep an eye on them. Ethan is desperate now. Desperate men do stupid things. Wade left. The room felt smaller after he was gone, like the walls were closing in. Frank stared at the ceiling. His breathing was shallow, controlled. He killed Rebecca, he said. I knew. Deep down, I knew, but I let myself pretend I did not. Because he is my son, and I did not want it to be true. You could not have stopped him, Jake said. Maybe not. But I could have told the police, could have pushed for an investigation. Instead, I stayed quiet. And now Rebecca is dead, and Martha is in surgery, and I am lying here because I was too much of a coward to face what my son had become. You are not a coward. Then what am I? Jake thought about that, about all the times he had looked away from hard truths, about Danny Chen, about his failed marriage, about his children growing up without him because he chose the road over them. You are human, Jake said. Humans make mistakes. We see what we want to see, believe what we need to believe. You are not responsible for what Ethan did. You are only responsible for what you do now. And what do I do now? You fight, you testify, you make sure he answers for all of it. Rebecca, you, Martha, all of it. Frank nodded slowly. Okay, I can do that. The door opened again. A nurse wheeled Martha in. She was still unconscious. Pale, tubes and wires connected her to machines that beeped and hummed. But she was alive, breathing on her own. They moved her into the bed beside Frank's. The nurse checked her vitals, adjusted the IV, spoke in soft, professional tones about recovery and visiting hours and things that did not matter because all Frank cared about was that his wife was here, in reach, safe. When the nurse left, Frank reached out his hand, managed to touch Martha's fingers. We are going to be okay, he whispered. We are going to get through this. Jake stood, gave them privacy, walked out into the hallway, found a window that looked west toward where the ranch would be, toward where Ethan had beaten his parents and left them to die. Thunder cracked. Lightning split the sky. The storm was here. Tomorrow, Wade would make arrests. The machinery of justice would begin to turn. But tonight, Jake Morrison stood watch, the way Marines always did, because Gunny Dawson had taught him 32 years ago that you never left your brothers behind. And Frank and Martha Dawson were his brothers now, in every way that mattered. The night passed slowly. Jake dozed in the chair between Frank and Martha's beds. Hospital sleep. Never deep. Always one ear listening for alarms or footsteps or the change in breathing that meant something had gone wrong. Frank woke twice. Once to use the bathroom, which required help from a nurse and 15 minutes of painful shuffling. Once to check on Martha, who still had not woken. Martha's surgery had been more extensive than Dr. Kim had initially thought. The kidney damage had been worse. They had to remove part of it, repair blood vessels, stop bleeding that kept starting again every time they thought they had it controlled. She would live, probably, but the next 72 hours were critical. Jake watched Frank watch his wife, saw the fear in the old Marine's eyes, the helplessness. Frank had survived Vietnam, had faced death 100 times. But watching Martha fight for her life was harder than any combat. Tell me about how you met, Jake said quietly, something to break the silence, to give Frank's mind somewhere else to go. Frank smiled, barely. 1971, I had been back from Vietnam for a year, was not doing well, PTSD, though we did not call it that then. Just said I was having adjustment problems. He shifted in the bed, winced. They sent me to community college, said education would help, give me purpose. I did not believe them, but I went anyway, English class. I could shoot a rifle, dig a foxhole, call in artillery, but I could not write an essay to save my life. Martha was the teacher? Teaching assistant. She was getting her master's degree, 23 years old, blonde hair down to her waist, smiled at me like I was not damaged, like I was just another student who needed help. Frank's eyes were distant now, seeing the past. I showed up to her office hours every week, pretended I needed help with my papers. Really, I just wanted to be near her. She knew, of course she knew, but she was patient, kind. She would read my terrible essays and find something good to say about them. When did you ask her out? I did not. I was too scared, too convinced she would say no. So I just kept showing up to her office until one day she said, Frank Dawson, if you are going to spend this much time with me, the least you can do is buy me dinner. Jake smiled. Direct approach. She has always been direct. No games, no pretending, just honest. That is why I love her. The machines beeped. Martha's chest rose and fell. Regular, steady. She is gonna make it, Jake said. She is too stubborn not to. I hope you are right. Morning came gray and wet. The storm had passed, but left behind heavy clouds and drizzle. Jake walked to the hospital cafeteria, bought coffee that actually tasted like coffee, and a breakfast sandwich that was mostly edible. When he got back to the room, Frank was awake, sitting up carefully. A nurse was checking his vitals. You are healing well, Mr. Dawson, the nurse said. Ribs will take 6 weeks. Concussion should clear in a few days. You are lucky, very lucky. She left. Frank looked at Jake. Wade called. He is picking up Ethan now. Should have him in custody by noon. Jake checked his phone. It was 8 a.m., 4 hours. How do you feel about that? Frank was quiet for a long moment. I do not know. Part of me wants to see him in handcuffs. Part of me wishes none of this had ever happened. You cannot change the past. No, but I keep replaying it, wondering if I had done something different, said something different. Maybe it would have turned out another way. Or maybe it would have turned out exactly the same. You cannot control other people's choices, only your own. The door opened. Dr. Kim walked in. She looked more rested than yesterday, had probably gone home, slept, showered, done all the things normal people did when they were not fighting to save lives. Good morning, she said. I wanted to check on Mrs. Dawson before my rounds. She examined Martha, checked the monitors, adjusted medication doses. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency. The surgery went well, Dr. Kim said. We removed the damaged portion of her kidney. The remaining tissue is healthy and should compensate. I am reducing her sedation now. She should wake up in the next few hours. Frank let out a breath he had been holding. Thank you, he said, for everything. Dr. Kim smiled. My father always said doctors fix bodies, but it is the will to live that heals people. Your wife has that will. I can see it. She left. Frank and Jake sat in silence, waiting for Martha to wake, waiting for Wade to make arrests, waiting for whatever came next. Jake's phone buzzed, text from Wade. Got Ethan, no resistance. Lawyered up immediately. Victoria in custody, Austin PD. Cole turned himself in at station 20 minutes ago. All three being transported to county jail. Jake showed the message to Frank. It is done, Frank said. They are in custody. First step. Long way to go yet. I know, but it is a start. Martha's eyes fluttered, opened, unfocused at first, then finding Frank. Frank, she whispered. Her voice was raw from the breathing tube. I am here, right here. What happened? You are in the hospital. You had surgery, but you are okay. You are going to be okay. Martha's eyes moved around the room, took in the machines, the IV, Jake sitting in the corner. Who is that? That is Jake Morrison. He is the one who found us, saved us. Martha looked at Jake, really looked at him. Something passed across her face, recognition maybe, or just gratitude. Thank you, she said. Jake nodded, did not trust his voice. Martha's hand found Frank's, squeezed weakly. The children, she said. What about the children? Frank's jaw tightened. They are under arrest, all three of them. Oh. Martha closed her eyes, a tear slid down her cheek. I kept hoping it was a nightmare, that I would wake up and it would not be real. I know, me too. They sat together in silence, holding hands across the space between beds. Two people who had spent 48 years together and now had to figure out how to survive their children trying to kill them. Jake stood. I'm going to get some air. Give you two some time. He walked out, down the hallway, through the automatic doors into the parking lot. The drizzle had stopped, but everything was wet. Puddles reflected gray sky. His phone rang. Lisa, his ex-wife. Jake, I heard about what you did. It is all over the news. Truck driver saves elderly couple abandoned by children. Is that really you? Yeah, that is me. Are you okay? I am fine. You lost your job. I know. And you stayed anyway, to help strangers. They are not strangers anymore. Lisa was quiet for a moment. The kids saw the news. They want to talk to you. They are proud of you, Jake. They said you did something brave. Jake felt something crack in his chest. His kids. Proud of him. When was the last time that had been true? Can I call them? He asked. They would like that, Emily especially. She has been asking about you, wondering when you are coming home. I do not know when I am coming home. This is going to take a while. Then call her. Let her know you are okay. That is all she wants. They talked for a few more minutes, made plans for Jake to video call the kids that evening. When they hung up, Jake stood in the parking lot and looked at his reflection in a puddle. He looked tired, older than his 50 years, but there was something else there too. Something he had not seen in a long time. Purpose. For 20 years he had been running. From Danny Chen, from his failed marriage, from his kids, from himself. But standing here in a hospital parking lot in small-town Texas, Jake Morrison had finally stopped running. And for the first time in 2 decades, he knew exactly where he was supposed to be. He walked back inside, back to Frank and Martha, back to the fight that was just beginning. Because Marines did not abandon their brothers. And the Dawsons were his brothers now. 3 days after the arrests, Sheriff Wade Tucker sat across from Jake and Frank in a conference room at the county courthouse. The room smelled like old wood and older coffee. A fan rattled in the corner, pushing hot air around without cooling anything. Wade spread photos across the table. Crime scene photos from the ranch. Highway 287. The hospital. DA is charging all three with conspiracy to commit murder, Wade said. Ethan is also being charged with first-degree murder in Rebecca's death. Liberty Mutual came through with their forensic analysis. Brake fluid definitely had acid added. Crime lab in Houston confirmed it. Frank stared at the photos. His face was impassive, but Jake could see the muscle working in his jaw. What about bail? Frank asked. Ethan is being held without bail, flight risk plus capital murder charge. Victoria made bail this morning, $250,000. Her ex-husband posted it. And Cole? Wade hesitated. Cole is cooperating. His lawyer worked out a deal. He testifies against Ethan and Victoria. He gets reduced charges, probably probation, maybe minimal jail time. Frank looked up. He helped, he was there, he loaded us into the car. I know, but without his testimony, this case gets a lot harder. He is the only witness besides you and Martha. What about evidence? We have plenty, but evidence can be explained away. Defense lawyers are good at that. Witness testimony is harder to dismiss. Frank leaned back in his chair, closed his eyes. What does Cole say happened? Wade pulled out a notepad, flipped through pages. He says Ethan planned it, spent weeks convincing him and Victoria that you were going to leave everything to charity out of spite, that you were mentally declining, that you would die soon anyway, and the ranch would be lost to taxes and legal fees. Wade looked up. He says Ethan showed them financial projections, told them the ranch was worth almost $5 million. Said if they could get you to sign it over now, they could sell it, split the money, solve all their problems. And they believed him, Frank said. They wanted to believe him. Victoria's broke. Custody battle eating up everything she has. Cole has not held a job in 3 years. Ethan offered them a way out. So they decided to murder their parents. Cole says he did not know it would go that far. Says he thought they were just going to scare you. Make you sign. When the violence started, he froze, could not stop it, could not help you. Frank opened his eyes, looked at Wade. Do you believe him? Wade considered that. I think he is telling part of the truth. I think he was weak, easily led, but I also think he made a choice. When Ethan told him to get in the car, he got in. When Ethan told him to leave you on that highway, he left. Those were choices. Then he should pay for them. He will. Maybe not as much as Ethan, but he will pay. Jake had been quiet, listening. Now he spoke. What about Victoria? She is not cooperating. Her lawyer says she is a victim of Ethan's manipulation, that she was coerced, that she tried to stop the violence and was threatened. Is that true? Wade shrugged. Impossible to say. She was there. She participated. Whether she did it willingly or under duress, we may never know for sure. Frank stood, walked to the window, looked out at the town square. Small, quiet. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone, and violence like this was not supposed to happen. I want to testify, Frank said, at trial. I want to look Ethan in the eye and tell the jury what he did. You will get your chance. When? Trial is scheduled for 8 weeks from now. DA wants to move fast before media attention dies down. Public opinion is on your side. Elderly veteran attacked by greedy children. That plays well with juries. Frank turned our back. This is not about playing well. This is about justice. Justice is what we are after, but trials are theater. The side that tells the better story wins. We need to make sure our story is the one the jury believes. Jake stood. What do you need from us? Wade gathered the photos, slid them back into the folder. Prepare, get healthy, be ready to testify. And most importantly, stay alive. Ethan is in jail, but he has friends, people he owes money to. Desperate people do desperate things. You think he would try something? Jake asked. I think he has already tried to kill his wife and his parents. I think he has nothing left to lose. So yeah, I think we need to be careful. They left the courthouse. Frank moving slowly, still healing. Jake beside him, watchful. The town had changed in the last 3 days. Word had spread fast. Elderly couple attacked, left to die, saved by truck driver. The story had legs. Local news picked it up. Then regional, now national outlets were calling. People stopped Frank on the street, offered condolences, asked if he needed anything. The outpouring was overwhelming. I do not know how to handle this, Frank said as they walked. People treating me like a victim. like something to be pitied. They are not pitying you. They are showing respect. There is a difference. Is there? They reached Jake's truck, the one he had been driving when he found them. His former employer had demanded it back. Jake had told them where they could shove their demand. The truck sat in the hospital parking lot, unclaimed, unwanted. I need to return this, Jake said, before they come looking for it with a repo truck. Where will you go after? Jake had been thinking about that. He had no job, no home to go back to. His apartment lease had ended 2 months ago. Everything he owned fit in a duffel bag in the truck's cab. I do not know, Jake admitted. I was thinking about staying around here, finding work, being available for the trial. Frank looked at him for a long moment. The ranch has a guest house, small, 2 rooms. It has not been used in years, but it is yours if you want it. Jake felt something tighten in his throat. I cannot take advantage of you like that. It is not taking advantage. It is accepting help, something you need to learn how to do. Frank, I barely know you. You saved my life, Martha's life. You gave up everything to help strangers. That makes you family, and family does not abandon family. Jake looked away, blinked hard. Okay, he said, thank you. Do not thank me. Just help me fix the place up. It is a mess. Roof leaks, plumbing is shot. But between the two of us, we can make it livable. They drove out to the ranch in Jake's truck, the first time Jake had seen it beyond the crime scene photos. 800 acres of Texas prairie, cattle grazing in distant pastures, a barn that had stood for 100 years, a main house that showed its age but still stood proud, and everywhere the weight of history, of generations who had fought to keep this land, who had bled for it, died for it, built their lives around it. Ethan had tried to steal all of that, not just the land, but the legacy, the meaning. And he had almost succeeded. Jake parked the truck. They walked through the main house. Bloodstains still marked the living room floor where the violence had happened. Furniture was overturned. Photos knocked from walls. Frank stood in the center of the room, looked around at the destruction. I do not know if I can live here again, he said quietly. Every time I walk through that door, I am going to remember, going to see it happening again. Then we change it, Jake said. Paint the walls, replace the furniture, turn this room into something new. You cannot erase what happened, but you can build over it. Frank nodded slowly. Maybe you are right. They walked to the guest house. Frank had not exaggerated. It was a wreck. Roofs sagged, windows were cracked. Inside smelled like mold and mouse droppings. But the bones were good, solid foundation, strong walls. It will take work, Frank said. I have time. They stood together in the ruins of the guest house and made plans. How to fix the roof, replace the windows, gut the interior, and rebuild it. It felt good, purposeful, like building something instead of watching it fall apart. As the sun set over the ranch, painting the sky orange and red, Jake understood why Frank had fought so hard to keep this place, why he was willing to testify against his own children to protect it. This was not just land. This was legacy. This was 4 generations of Dawsons refusing to quit, refusing to give up, refusing to let the land beat them. And now Jake was part of that, part of the fight to keep it alive. He thought about Danny Chen, about 3 seconds of hesitation, about 20 years of running. And he thought about how sometimes, in the strangest ways, the universe gives you a chance to make things right. Not by going back, you could never go back, but by standing still, by choosing to stay when leaving would be easier, by remembering what Gunny Dawson had taught him 32 years ago on a rifle range in California. Never leave a man behind. Not then, not now, not ever. The guest house roof leaked in 3 places. Jake discovered this the first night he slept there, when rain from another summer storm found its way through rotted shingles and dripped onto the floor 6 inches from his sleeping bag. He moved the bag. The rain found another hole. He moved again. By morning, he had slept in 4 different positions and given up on staying dry. Frank found him at dawn, soaked and irritable, standing in the middle of the small living room with a bucket catching water. I told you it was bad, Frank said. Bad is an understatement. This place is one good storm away from collapsing. Then we better get to work. They spent the next week rebuilding. Frank was not supposed to be doing physical labor. Dr. Kim had been explicit. Rest. Light activity only. No lifting, no climbing, no stress. Frank ignored all of it. He moved like a man possessed, tearing out rotted wood, hauling trash, directing Jake on where to cut, where to nail, where to brace. His ribs screamed, his back seized. He did not care. Jake understood. The work was not about fixing a building. It was about fixing something broken inside Frank, about taking control of something when everything else in his life had spun into chaos. So Jake worked beside him, learned the rhythm of construction, measure twice, cut once, square the corners, check the level, the simple, honest work of building something with your hands. By the end of the week, the roof was solid, the windows replaced, the interior gutted down to studs, ready to be rebuilt properly. They sat on the porch of the main house as the sun set, drinking beer that tasted like victory. Frank moved slowly into his chair, still favoring his ribs, but there was something different in his face, something that had not been there before. Purpose. Martha comes home tomorrow, Frank said. Dr. Kim cleared her this morning. How is she doing? Better. Physically, anyway. The kidney is healing. The fractures are stable, but she has nightmares. Wakes up screaming. Thinks she is back on the highway. PTSD. Yeah. Dr. Kim recommended a therapist, someone who specializes in trauma. Martha says she does not need it, says she is fine. Is she? Frank was quiet for a long time, watching the sun paint the sky red and orange, colors of fire and blood. No, he said finally, neither of us is fine. How can we be? Our children tried to kill us. That is not something you just get over. No, but you survive it day by day. You wake up, you keep moving. Eventually it hurts a little less. You sound like you know. I do. After Danny Chen died, I spent 2 years convinced I should have died instead of him. Went to some dark places, did some stupid things. Eventually I realized that dying was easy. Living was the hard part. And if I was going to live, I needed to make it mean something. Frank looked at him. Did you? Make it mean something? Jake thought about the last 20 years. The endless highway miles. The failed marriage. The children who barely knew him. The jobs that did not matter. The life that felt like waiting for something that never came. Not until now, he said. The next morning, Jake drove Frank to the hospital to pick up Martha. She was waiting in a wheelchair by the entrance, a nurse standing beside her with discharge papers and a bag of medications. Martha looked smaller than Jake remembered. Fragile. Her face was still bruised, the swelling reduced but not gone. Her left eye was bloodshot. Her movements were careful, painful. But she smiled when she saw Frank. Take me home, she said. They drove back to the ranch in silence. Martha stared out the window at the passing landscape. The fields, the fences, the cattle grazing under the wide Texas sky. When they pulled up to the house, she did not move. I do not know if I can go in there, she said quietly. I keep seeing it. What happened? What they did? Frank took her hand. We changed it, Jake and I. Moved the furniture, painted the walls. It is not the same room anymore. But it is the same house. Yes, but it is our house. We built it. We are not going to let them take that from us too. Martha nodded slowly. Let Frank help her out of the truck. They walked together to the front door, stopped at the threshold. Jake stayed back, gave them space. This was their moment. Their house, their choice to reclaim it or abandon it. Martha stepped inside, looked around at the changes, the new paint, the rearranged furniture, the absence of the things that had been broken. She walked to the center of the living room, the exact spot where she had been thrown against the railing, where her cheekbone had shattered, where her children had proven that blood meant nothing and cruelty meant everything. She stood there for the long moment. Then she turned to Frank. We are going to need new curtains, she said. These are hideous. Frank laughed, actually laughed, the first real laugh Jake had heard from him. Yeah, Frank said. We probably should have consulted you on the decorating. Men, Martha said. No sense of color coordination. She walked through the rest of the house, touching walls, opening cabinets, reclaiming her space inch by inch. When she came back to the living room, she looked at Jake. Frank tells me you are staying, living in the guest house. If that is okay with you. More than okay. I like knowing someone is watching over us. Someone we can trust. You can trust me. Martha studied him, really looked at him. And Jake had the uncomfortable feeling that she was seeing straight through him, past the tough exterior, past the Marine training, down to the broken parts he tried to hide. I know we can, she said. You have kind eyes. Sad, but kind. Frank does not make friends easily. If he trusts you, that is good enough for me. She walked to the kitchen, started opening drawers, taking inventory of what was there and what was missing. Frank came over to Jake, spoke quietly. Thank you for everything, for staying, for helping rebuild, for being here. You do not need to keep thanking me. Yes, I do, because I do not know how to repay what you have done. You do not repay it, you pay it forward. When you see someone who needs help, you stop. Simple as that. Frank nodded. Simple as that. Sheriff Wade Tucker arrived an hour later. He was not alone. With him was a woman Jake had not met. Late 50s, gray hair pulled back severe, eyes that missed nothing. She wore a badge clipped to her belt and moved like someone who had been in law enforcement long enough to know when to be gentle and when to be hard. This is Detective Maria Rodriguez, Wade said. Texas Rangers. She is taking lead on the investigation. Maria shook hands. Her grip was firm, professional. Mr. Dawson, Mrs. Dawson, Mr. Morrison, I have been reviewing the case files. I wanted to meet you in person. See the crime scene. Get a feel for what we are dealing with. What are we dealing with? Frank asked. Maria pulled out a tablet, opened a file, showed them photos. Crime scene photos from the ranch, from Highway 287, from the hospital. What we are dealing with is premeditated attempted murder with aggravating circumstances. Elder abuse, conspiracy, financial exploitation, and possibly, if Liberty Mutual's investigation pans out, first-degree murder of Rebecca Dawson. She swiped through more photos. Your son Ethan is looking at life in prison without parole. Victoria is looking at 20 years minimum. Cole, if he continues cooperating, might get 5 to 10. Might? Martha asked. Depends on how useful his testimony is. Right now, he is our star witness, but defense lawyers are going to tear him apart on the stand. Alcoholic, unemployed, history of lying. They will make him look unreliable. What about physical evidence? Jake asked. Maria smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of a predator who had cornered prey. That is why I am here. We have been going through evidence for the last week. Found some things that change everything. She looked at Cole. Your youngest son, he wears a body camera. Did you know that? Frank frowned. A body camera? Like police wear? Exactly like that. He clips it to his shirt, records everything. Has for years. Paranoid about being falsely accused of things. Wants proof of what really happened. Understanding dawned on Frank's face. He was wearing it when they came here, when they attacked us. Yes, and he forgot to turn it off. Maria tapped the tablet. A video began to play. Audio clear, video slightly shaky but visible. The camera showed the interior of the Dawson house. Frank and Martha standing in the living room. Ethan, Victoria, and Cole facing them. The camera perspective was from Cole's chest, showing what he saw. Jake watched the whole thing play out. The argument, Ethan grabbing Martha, Frank shoving Ethan away, the violence that followed, every moment captured in digital clarity. But more than the video, the audio was damning, crystal clear, every word preserved. Ethan's voice. Sign the fucking papers or I swear to God I will make you regret it. Frank's voice. Get out of my house. The sound of the first punch. Martha screaming, Cole's panicked breathing. Then the part that made Jake's blood run cold. Ethan's phone ringing, a woman's voice. Mr. Dawson, this is Liberty Mutual Investigations regarding your late wife, Rebecca's policy. Ethan hanging up. Victoria's voice scared. What was that about? Ethan ignoring her. Then later in the car. Cole must have kept recording. The camera showed the interior of the Escalade. Frank and Martha unconscious in the back seat. Victoria's voice. Ethan, where are we going? Ethan's voice. Shut up. The sound of the phone ringing again. The same woman from Liberty Mutual. Ethan rejecting the call. Victoria more insistent. That was about Rebecca, your first wife. Why are they calling about her? Ethan, cold. Because I killed her. And if Liberty Mutual proves it, I am going to prison. I need the ranch money to disappear. But I cannot have witnesses who can testify against me. The sound of Victoria gasping. Cole's sharp intake of breath. Then the highway. The dump. Every word Ethan said preserved forever. You should have signed. This could have been easy, but you had to be stubborn. So now you die out here and I get what I need. The video ended. The room was silent. Martha was crying, silent tears streaming down her face. Frank sat rigid, hands clenched into fists. That is a confession, Jake said, to everything. Rebecca, attempted murder, all of it. Maria nodded. Yes, and it is admissible in court. Cole did not know he was recording. No expectation of privacy in a car during a kidnapping. Defense will fight it, but they will lose. When did you find this? Frank asked. His voice was hollow. 3 days ago. Cole's lawyer turned it over as part of his cooperation agreement. We have been authenticating it, making sure it was not edited or faked. It is real, every second of it. Wade leaned forward. This changes the trial. With this video, conviction is guaranteed. The only question is whether Ethan gets life without parole or the death penalty. Frank looked up sharply. Death penalty? Texas is a capital punishment state. Murder for hire, murder during kidnapping, murder to prevent testimony, all are death penalty eligible. DA is considering it. No, Frank said. Everyone looked at him. No death penalty. I will not be responsible for killing my son. Frank, Wade said gently, he tried to kill you. I know what he did. I know what he is. But I will not kill him. I will put him in prison for the rest of his life. But I will not sign his death warrant. Maria studied Frank for a long moment. That is your choice. I will pass it along to the DA, but you should know that Ethan is not showing any remorse. He is not sorry. And if he gets the chance, he will try to finish what he started. Then make sure he does not get the chance. Maria packed up her tablet. We will do our best. In the meantime, I need you to be careful. All of you. Ethan has been in jail for 2 weeks now. His lawyer made bail arguments yesterday. Judge denied them, but he is going to keep trying. You think he will make bail? Martha asked. No, but I think he has connections. People he owes money to. People who might be willing to help him in exchange for a piece of the ranch. We have increased patrols in the area. Plainclothes officers watching the house. But you need to stay alert. After Maria and Wade left, the three of them sat in silence, processing what they had seen, what they had heard. He killed Rebecca, Martha said finally, and we knew. We suspected, but we let him get away with it. We did not know for sure, Frank said, but we suspected, and we said nothing. And then he came after us. If we had spoken up 5 years ago, Rebecca would still be alive. We would not have been attacked. None of this would have happened. You cannot think like that. How else should I think? We were cowards. We chose our son over the truth, and people died because of it. Frank had no answer for that, because she was right. Jake stood. I am going to check the perimeter, make sure everything is secure. He walked out, gave them space to grieve, to rage, to process the guilt that would eat at them for the rest of their lives. Outside, the Texas sun was setting. Another day ending, another night coming. Jake walked the fence line, checked the gates, made sure nothing was out of place. His phone rang. Lisa. Hey, he said. Hey yourself, how are you holding up? I'm okay. They found video evidence. Cole recorded everything. Ethan confessed to killing his first wife, to trying to kill Frank and Martha. All of it is on tape. Jesus, that is huge. Yeah, trial is going to be quick. Conviction is guaranteed. And then what? What do you mean? I mean, after the trial, after Ethan goes to prison, what are you going to do? You cannot stay in Texas forever playing bodyguard to people you barely know. Jake looked back at the house, at the lights in the windows, at Frank and Martha inside, trying to rebuild a life that had been shattered. I barely knew them when I stopped on the highway, Jake said. Now I know them, and they need help, so I'm staying. For how long? I do not know, as long as it takes. Lisa was quiet for a moment. The kids miss you. Emily keeps asking when you are coming home. I know, I miss them too, but this is something I have to do. Why? Why do you have to do this? Jake thought about how to explain it. About Danny Chen, about 3 seconds of hesitation, about 20 years of running, about finally finding a place to stand. Because I left someone behind once, he said, and I have spent 20 years living with it. I am not doing it again. These people are not your responsibility. Maybe not, but they are my choice, and that matters. They talked for a few more minutes, made plans for Jake to video call the kids over the weekend. When they hung up, Jake stood in the gathering dark and wondered if he was doing the right thing. Staying in Texas, living in a broken-down guest house, helping 2 old people he had known for less than a month. It did not make sense. Any rational person would have moved on by now, found a new job, rebuilt his life somewhere else. But Jake had stopped being rational the moment he hit the brakes on Highway 287, and he was not about to start now. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange rhythm. Frank and Martha settled into a new routine. Physical therapy 3 times a week for both of them. Counseling sessions twice a week with a trauma therapist. Doctor visits to monitor healing. Jake worked on the guest house, rebuilt the interior walls, ran new plumbing, installed a small kitchen, put in flooring, turned the wreck into something livable. Frank helped when his body allowed it, taught Jake the difference between load-bearing walls and partition walls, showed him how to square a corner, how to make joints tight, how to build something that would last. They did not talk much while they worked, but the silence was comfortable, the kind of silence that came from shared purpose, shared pain, shared determination to build something good from the ruins of something terrible. In the evenings, the three of them ate dinner together. Martha cooked, simple meals, nothing fancy. But the act of cooking, of feeding people, seemed to help her, gave her control over something when so much else was beyond her control. One night, over chicken and rice, Martha asked Jake about his family. "You said you have kids. Tell me about them." Jake set down his fork. "Emily is 17, senior in high school, wants to be a veterinarian, smart, stubborn, looks like her mother." "And your son?" "Brad, 15, plays football. Not great at it, but he loves it. Wants to join the Marines when he graduates." "Are you close with them?" "Not as close as I should be. The divorce was hard. I chose the road over them. Told myself it was to provide for them, but really I was running from being a husband and father." "Do they resent you?" "Probably. They have every right to." Martha nodded. "Children are strange. We give them everything, love them with our whole hearts. Sometimes they love us back. Sometimes they do not. And we have no control over which way it goes." "Are you talking about Emily and Brad or Victoria and Cole?" "Both. All children. They make their choices and we have to live with the consequences." Frank reached over, took her hand. "We did our best," he said. "Did we?" "Because our best produced a son who murdered his wife and tried to murder us. That does not feel like our best. You cannot control what he became, but we shaped him. Every moment of his childhood we were teaching him, showing him how to be. Where did we teach him that money matters more than people? That killing is acceptable if it gets you what you want?" Frank had no answer. Neither did Jake. They finished dinner in silence, cleared the dishes, said goodnight. Jake walked back to the guest house. It was nearly finished now, just needed paint and some furniture. But it was solid, dry, his. He lay on the sleeping bag and stared at the ceiling, thought about children and choices and the weight of consequences. Thought about Emily and Brad growing up without him, making choices he would not be there to guide, becoming people he might not recognize. He pulled out his phone, texted Lisa, "Can I call the kids tomorrow? I want to talk to them, really talk." Her response came back fast. "They would love that. So would I." Jake set the phone aside, closed his eyes. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, he felt something like peace. Not happiness, not joy, but the quiet satisfaction of knowing he was where he was supposed to be, doing what he was supposed to do. Building instead of destroying, staying instead of running, choosing right over easy. The trial was scheduled to start in 3 weeks. The DA had assembled an airtight case. The video, the GPS evidence, the forensics from Rebecca's car, Cole's testimony, Frank and Martha's statements. Ethan's defense team had filed motion after motion, trying to suppress the video, trying to exclude evidence, trying to delay. Every motion was denied. They had nothing. Everyone knew it. But that did not stop them from trying. 2 days before jury selection was set to begin, Victoria's lawyer called Wade Tucker, asked for a meeting, said his client wanted to talk. Wade brought Maria Rodriguez. They met in a conference room at the county jail. Victoria sat on one side of the table, her lawyer beside her. She looked terrible, thin, pale, shadows under her eyes. "My client wishes to make a statement," the lawyer said. Maria leaned back, arms crossed. "We are listening." Victoria looked down at her hands. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I want to tell you what really happened. All of it. The truth. Your brother already confessed on video. What more is there to tell? The video does not show the weeks before, the months, how Ethan manipulated us, convinced us, broke us down until we believed that our parents were the enemy and he was the only one trying to help." Maria glanced at Wade. This was new. "Start from the beginning," Maria said. Victoria took a shaky breath. "It started about a year ago. Ethan called me, said he was worried about Dad, said Dad was forgetting things, making bad financial decisions. Ethan had done research, found out the ranch was worth almost $5 million. Said if we did not protect it now, Dad would lose it all." She looked up, met Maria's eyes. "I believed him. I wanted to believe him, because I was drowning. Custody battle with my ex, legal fees eating everything. I needed money. Ethan knew that, used it. How? He showed me projections, said if we got the ranch into a trust, we could borrow against it, get loans to cover our expenses. When Dad died, we would sell the land and split the money. Everyone wins. Except your parents lose control of their property. He said they would keep life rights, could live there until they died, that we were protecting them, not stealing from them. And you believe that? Victoria's eyes filled with tears. I wanted to. God help me, I wanted to. Because the alternative was that I was trying to steal from my parents, and I could not face that. What changed? When I saw the video, heard Ethan admit he killed Rebecca, heard him say he was going to let Mom and Dad die on that highway. That was when I understood. This was never about protecting anyone. This was about Ethan covering up murder. Maria leaned forward. Are you willing to testify to all of this against your brother? Yes. Even knowing it will not save you from prison? I know I am going to prison. I deserve to go to prison, but I am not going to let Ethan destroy what is left of our family. If I can help you put him away for life, I will do it. Wade and Maria exchanged looks. This changed things. We will talk to the DA, Maria said. See what kind of deal we can work out. But understand that cooperation does not mean immunity. You still participated. You still helped. I know. I just want to do one thing right. One thing that might make my parents hate me a little less. After the meeting, Wade and Maria walked to the parking lot. You believe her? Wade asked. About Ethan manipulating them? Maybe. About her being sorry? I am not sure. Sorry you got caught is different from sorry you did it. Either way, her testimony helps. Jury will love it. The dutiful daughter who finally saw the light and turned on the evil brother. Yeah, it is almost too perfect, like a made-for-TV movie. They got in Wade's truck, drove back toward the ranch. How do you think Frank is going to take this? Wade asked. Maria shook her head. I have no idea. His daughter wants to testify against his son. How do you process that? When they arrived at the ranch, Frank and Martha were on the porch. Jake was with them, working on replacing a rotten board. Wade told them about Victoria, about her offer to cooperate, about her admission of guilt and willingness to testify. Frank listened without expression. When Wade finished, Frank was quiet for a long time. Does she mean it? He finally asked. Or is this just another manipulation? Hard to say, but either way, her testimony helps convict Ethan. At the cost of sending his own sister to prison, she sent herself to prison when she helped him attack you. Frank stood, walked to the edge of the porch, looked out at the land he had fought so hard to keep. I have 3 children, he said. One is a murderer. One is a coward who helped him. One finally found a conscience, but only after getting caught. And I am supposed to take comfort in that last one testifying against the other 2? I am not asking you to take comfort in anything. I am just telling you what is happening. Frank turned. Fera, thank you for letting me know, but I need some time to process this. Wade and Maria left. Jake went back to working on the porch. Frank and Martha sat in silence. After a while, Martha spoke. Maybe it is good, Victoria testifying. Maybe it means she still has some good in her. Or maybe it means she is trying to save herself by throwing Ethan under the bus. Does it matter? Either way, Ethan goes to prison. It matters to me. I want to know if any of my children actually love me, or if it was all just performance, waiting for me to die so they could cash in. Martha reached for his hand. You know Cole loved you, maybe not enough to stop what happened, but he loved you. The video proves it. He was crying, he was saying it was wrong, but he did not stop it. No, but he recorded it, and that recording is what will put Ethan away. Maybe that was his way of trying to make it right. Frank closed his eyes, squeezed her hand. I do not know how to forgive them, any of them. I do not even know if I should try. You do not have to decide that today or tomorrow, maybe not ever. Forgiveness is earned, and they have not earned it. They sat together as the sun set, as the day ended and another night began. And somewhere in the darkness, their children waited in jail cells for a trial that would decide the rest of their lives. A trial that would force Frank and Martha to relive the worst day of their lives in front of a courtroom full of strangers. A trial that would either bring justice or break them completely. Jake finished replacing the board, gathered his tools, looked at Frank and Martha sitting together on the porch. They looked small, old, fragile. Nothing like the strong, capable people who had built this ranch and survived Vietnam and raised 3 children and weathered 48 years of marriage. But they were still here, still fighting, still refusing to quit. And as long as they kept fighting, Jake would stand beside them. Because that was what Marines did. They stood, they fought, they protected, and they never, ever left a brother behind. Even when the brother was not born a Marine, even when the connection was forged not in boot camp, but on a highway in the Texas heat. Even then, especially then, Jake walked to the guest house, his house now, the place he had rebuilt with his own hands, a place that would never be much. 2 rooms and a bathroom and a kitchen, barely big enough to turn around in. But it was his, and it was home. More of a home than any apartment he had rented in the last 20 years. More of a home than the house he had shared with Lisa before the divorce. Because this place meant something, stood for something. It was built on sacrifice, on choosing to stay when leaving would be easier, on standing with people who needed standing for. It was built on the lessons Gunny Dawson had taught him 32 years ago. And every nail Jake had driven, every board he had cut, every wall he had framed, all of it was a testament to those lessons. A promise kept, a debt repaid, a life finally lived with purpose. Jake lay down, closed his eyes, and slept without nightmares for the first time in 20 years. The Childress County Courthouse was built in 1927, back when courthouses were designed to inspire awe and fear in equal measure. 3 stories of limestone and granite, high ceilings with crown molding, windows that let in light but made you feel small, the kind of building that reminded you that justice was bigger than any individual. Older, more permanent, unforgiving. Jake Morrison sat in the gallery on the first day of the trial and felt the weight of that history pressing down on him. Around him the courtroom filled, media in the back rows, cameras prohibited, but notebooks open. Local residents who had known Frank and Martha for decades. Veterans from the VFW filling an entire section, silent solidarity for one of their own. And at the prosecution table, Frank and Martha Dawson. Frank in a suit that fit him like armor. Martha in a dark dress, her bruises faded now to yellow shadows but still visible. They sat side by side, hands clasped, back straight. Jake had never been more proud of people he barely knew. The defense table sat opposite. Ethan Dawson in an orange jumpsuit, wrists shackled. His lawyer beside him, a man named Richard Caldwell, who wore expensive suits and cheaper ethics. Victoria was not in the courtroom. She was being held separately, waiting to testify for the prosecution. Cole was already gone. His plea deal had been finalized 2 weeks ago. Misdemeanor accessory, 2 years probation, mandatory counseling. In exchange for his testimony and the body camera footage, he would walk free. Frank had not spoken to him since the arrest, had not visited him in jail, had not returned his calls or letters. Cole was alive and free, but to Frank, his youngest son was dead. The bailiff stood. All rise. The Honorable Judge Raymond Cole presiding. Everyone stood. Judge Cole entered. Late 60s, Vietnam veteran, silver hair, hard eyes that had seen men lie under oath 1,000 times and knew exactly what that looked like. He sat. The room sat. The machinery of justice began to turn. The district attorney was a woman named Elena Vasquez, 40-something, fierce. She had prosecuted over 200 cases and lost 3. She did not plan to make this number 4. Her opening statement was surgical. No wasted words, no theatrical gestures, just facts delivered like hammer blows. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case is about greed, about a son who loved money more than his parents, about a man who murdered his wife, and when his parents suspected, tried to murder them too. The evidence will show premeditation, planning, cruelty, and most damning of all, a confession, captured on video, in the defendant's own words. She paused. Let that sink in. You will hear from the victims, Frank and Martha Dawson, married 48 years. They will tell you about being beaten in their own home, about being driven 40 miles into the desert, about being left to die in 104-degree heat, no water, no phone, no hope. Another pause. You will see the video, every moment of violence, every word of confession. And when you do, you will know beyond any reasonable doubt that Ethan Dawson is guilty of attempted murder, of elder abuse, of conspiracy, and of first-degree murder of his wife, Rebecca. She sat down. The courtroom was silent. Richard Caldwell stood. He was smooth, practiced, the kind of lawyer who could make a guilty man seem sympathetic. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a tragedy, a family torn apart by misunderstanding and mental illness. My client, Ethan Dawson, suffers from severe anxiety disorder, paranoid delusions. When his father refused to discuss estate planning, Ethan's illness convinced him that his parents were trying to cut him out, to punish him, to leave him with nothing. He walked toward the jury box, made eye contact with each juror. What happened that day was a mental breakdown, a cry for help, not premeditated murder. My client is sick. He needs treatment, not life in prison. The prosecution will show you a video. They will tell you it is a confession. But what you will really see is a man in the grip of psychosis, saying things he does not mean, doing things he would never do if he were in his right mind. Caldwell sat. Jake wanted to punch him. Elena called her first witness, Sheriff Wade Tucker. Wade took the stand, sworn in, testified about the 911 call from Jake Morrison, about finding Frank and Martha in the hospital, about the evidence collected from the ranch and Highway 287. Caldwell cross-examined, tried to poke holes in the timeline, suggested that Frank and Martha might have wandered off on their own, confused, elderly, suffering from dementia. Wade shut that down fast. Medical records, doctor testimony, Frank and Martha were lucid, healthy, no signs of mental decline. Next witness was Dr. Sarah Kim. She testified about the injuries, the severity, the fact that they were consistent with sustained assault, not a fall or accident. Caldwell tried to suggest heat stroke could cause confusion, false memories. Dr. Kim destroyed him. Heat stroke causes disorientation, yes, but not fabricated detailed memories of being beaten by specific people. Not GPS data showing Ethan's car at the crime scene. Not video evidence. The jury was paying attention, leaning forward, taking notes. This was going exactly as Elena had planned. Day 2 started with Detective Maria Rodriguez. She walked the jury through the evidence. GPS data, cell phone records, the forged deed papers found at the ranch, each piece building on the last, creating a picture of premeditation. Then she introduced the body camera footage. The courtroom lights dimmed, a screen lowered. The video began to play. Jake watched the jury, watched their faces change as they saw the violence, heard Ethan's voice, heard him admit to killing Rebecca, heard him say he was going to let Frank and Martha die. 2 jurors were crying by the end. 3 others looked physically ill. One older man, a veteran judging by his bearing, stared at Ethan with open disgust. When the video ended, the courtroom was silent. Elena let that silence stretch, let the horror of what they had just seen settle into their bones. Then she called Frank Dawson to the stand. Frank stood, walked to the witness box. His limp was barely noticeable now. 8 weeks of physical therapy. But Jake knew it still hurt. Knew Frank was in pain with every step. Frank was sworn in Saturday, looked directly at the jury. Elena began gently, established who Frank was, his service record, his life on the ranch, his relationship with his children. Then she asked the hard question, Mr. Dawson, can you tell the jury what happened on the morning of June 14th? Frank took a breath. When he spoke, his voice was steady, controlled, the voice of a man who had testified at courts martial, who knew how to deliver facts without emotion. He told them everything. The confrontation, Ethan grabbing Martha, the violence, being loaded into the car, the drive to Highway 287, the dump. And when your son left you there, Elena asked, what did you think was going to happen? I thought we were going to die. Did you think anyone would find you? No, we were 40 miles from anywhere. No water, no phone. It was 104 degrees. At our age, I knew we had maybe a few hours before heat stroke killed us. And yet you survived. How? Frank looked directly at Jake. A man named Jake Morrison stopped his truck, former Marine, someone I had trained 32 years ago. He remembered what I taught him. Never leave a man behind. So he stopped when 19 other people drove past. Elena nodded. Mr. Dawson, do you believe your son intended to kill you? Yes. Why? Because he told me. On that highway, he said I should have signed the papers that I had forced his hand, that he needed me and Martha gone so we could not testify against him for murdering Rebecca. And how did that make you feel, hearing your son say that? Frank was quiet for a long moment. I felt like I had failed. As a father, as a man, I raised him, taught him, loved him, and he became someone capable of murder. That failure will haunt me for the rest of my life. The jury was riveted. Several were crying openly now. Caldwell stood for cross-examination. He tried to be gentle, tried to suggest Frank was confused, that the heat and trauma had distorted his memories. Frank did not budge, did not waver. Every question Caldwell asked, Frank answered with the same calm certainty. Yes, he was sure. Yes, he remembered clearly. Yes, his son had tried to kill him. Caldwell sat down, defeated. Martha testified next. She was more emotional than Frank, cried when describing the violence. But her testimony was just as powerful, just as damning. When she finished, the prosecution rested. Now it was the defense's turn, and they had nothing. Caldwell called a psychiatrist, Dr. Raymond Pierce, an expert witness who specialized in defending the indefensible. Pierce testified that Ethan suffered from severe mental illness, that his actions were the result of psychosis, that he was not responsible for what he had done. Elena tore him apart on cross-examination, pointed out that Pierce had been paid $45,000 for his testimony, that he had testified in 89 cases and found the defendant mentally ill in 87, that his opinions were for sale to the highest bidder. The jury was not impressed. Caldwell called character witnesses, people who had known Ethan, worked with him. They testified that he was a good man, a hard worker, a devoted father. But none of them could explain the video. None of them could explain away Ethan's own words. Then Caldwell made a mistake. He called Ethan to the stand. It was a desperate move, an attempt to humanize him, to let the jury see him as a person, not a monster. Ethan took the stand, answered Caldwell's softball questions, talked about his love for his parents, his concern for their well-being, his mental health struggles. Then Elena stood for cross-examination. She walked slowly toward the witness stand, locked eyes with Ethan. When she spoke, her voice was quiet, almost conversational. "Mr. Dawson, let's talk about Rebecca. Your first wife. She died 5 years ago, correct?" "Yes." "Car accident, brake failure." "Yes." "You collected $500,000 in life insurance." "Yes." Elena pulled out a document, handed it to Ethan. "This is the forensic report from Rebecca's vehicle. It shows acid in the brake fluid. Can you explain that?" Ethan's face paled. "I cannot. Cannot or will not. I do not know how acid got there. But you know it did not get there naturally." "I suppose not." Elena walked back to her table, picked up another document, the insurance investigator's report. She did not hand it to Ethan, just held it. "The investigator spoke to your parents. Your father told him he suspected you of killing Rebecca. Is that true?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "My father was wrong." "Was he? Or was he the only person who saw you for what you really are?" "Objection," Caldwell said, argumentative. "Sustained. Rephrase, Ms. Vasquez." Elena nodded. "Mr. Dawson, on the video, we hear you say, and I quote, 'I killed her. And if Liberty Mutual proves it, I am going to prison.' Were you talking about Rebecca?" Ethan stared at her. Trapped. If he said no, he was lying and the jury knew it. If he said yes, he was confessing to murder. He said nothing. "Let me ask you another question," Elena continued. "You drove your parents 40 miles into the desert, took their phones, their wallets, left them with no water in 104-degree heat. Is that correct?" "I was not in my right mind." "That was not my question. Did you do those things?" "Yes, but I was sick. I was having a breakdown." "A breakdown that allowed you to plan the attack, to coordinate with your siblings, to clean up the crime scene afterward, to drive back to Houston and establish an alibi. That is very organized behavior for someone having a psychotic break." Ethan's hands were shaking. "I do not know what you want me to say. I want you to tell the truth. Did you kill Rebecca?" "No." "Did you try to kill your parents?" "I was sick. I did not know what I was doing." Elena leaned on the witness box, locked eyes with him. "Mr. Dawson, when you left your parents on that highway, when you drove away, what did you think was going to happen to them?" Ethan's face crumbled. The mask he had been wearing slipped, and underneath was something raw and broken. "I thought they would die," he whispered. The courtroom went silent. "And you wanted them to die, did you not? Because dead people cannot testify." "I did not want it, but I needed the money. I needed to disappear. I had no choice." "You had every choice. You chose money over your parents' lives. You chose to murder Rebecca. You chose to attack your mother and father. Those were choices. Own them." Ethan was crying now, full sobs. His shoulders shook. "I am sorry," he choked out. "I am so sorry. I did not want to be this person. But I was drowning, debt, gambling, the loan sharks. They were going to kill me if I did not pay. I had no choice." "Did Rebecca have a choice when you sabotaged her brakes?" "No." "Did your parents have a choice when you left them to die?" "No." "Then stop pretending you are the victim here." Elena walked back to her table, sat down. She was done. Ethan sat in the witness box, broken, destroyed. He had just confessed to everything. On the stand, under oath, in front of a jury. Caldwell tried to salvage it on redirect, tried to frame the confession as proof of mental illness, but the damage was done. The jury had heard enough. Court adjourned for the day. Jake walked Frank and Martha out through the back entrance to avoid media. They climbed into Jake's truck, drove in silence back to the ranch. When they arrived, Martha went inside. Frank stayed on the porch, stared out at the land. He confessed, Frank said. My son confessed to murder. On the stand. I thought I would feel something. Relief. Justice. Something. But I just feel empty. Jake sat beside him. That is normal. You are grieving. Grieving what? He is still alive. Grieving the son you thought you had, the person you wanted him to be. That person is gone. Maybe he never existed, but you are allowed to grieve him. Frank nodded slowly. Tomorrow they call Victoria. My daughter is going to testify against my son. How did it come to this? One bad choice at a time, compounding, until the weight was too much to carry. They sat in silence as the sun set. Another day ending, another night beginning. Tomorrow would bring more testimony, more pain, more truth dragged into the light. But tonight they rested. Victoria Dawson took the stand on day 4. She wore a simple dress, no makeup, hair pulled back. She looked younger than her 47 years, fragile. Elena questioned her gently, established the timeline, the manipulation, Ethan's lies about their parents' mental state, his promises that the ranch would save them all. When did you realize Ethan was lying? Elena asked. When I saw the video, heard him admit he killed Rebecca. That was when I understood. He was not trying to help us. He was using us. And what did you do? I contacted Sheriff Tucker, offered to cooperate, to testify. It is not enough. It does not undo what I did, but it is all I have left. Do you regret what happened? Victoria looked directly at Frank and Martha, tears streaming down her face. Every second of every day. I attacked my own parents. I helped Ethan leave them to die. I will never forgive myself, and I do not expect them to forgive me either. Frank's expression did not change. He stared straight ahead, unmoved. Victoria's testimony lasted 2 hours. She detailed everything. Ethan's planning, his manipulation, the weeks of pressure, the final confrontation. When she finished, Caldwell declined to cross-examine. What was the point? The prosecution rested. Closing arguments began on day 5. Elena went first. She summarized the evidence, the video, the confessions, the physical proof. She painted a picture of a calculating killer who had murdered his wife and tried to murder his parents to cover his tracks. Caldwell countered with mental illness, with sympathy for a broken man, with pleas for mercy. The jury was not buying it. Judge Cole gave instructions. The jury filed out to deliberate. Frank, Martha, and Jake waited in a small room adjacent to the courtroom. Wade and Maria joined them. They sat in silence, drinking bad coffee, watching the clock. 6 hours passed, then 7, then 8. Is this good or bad? Martha asked. That it is taking so long? Could be either, Maria said. Long deliberations usually mean someone on the jury is holding out. But with this much evidence, I cannot imagine what they are arguing about. At 9 p.m., word came. The jury had reached a verdict. They filed back into the courtroom. The gallery was packed. Media, locals, veterans, everyone who had followed the case. Judge Cole entered. The room stood, sat. Has the jury reached a verdict? The judge asked. The foreman stood. An older man, weathered face, calloused hands, a rancher probably. Someone who understood the value of land and legacy. We have, Your Honor. On the charge of first-degree murder of Rebecca Dawson, how do you find? Guilty. Martha gasped. Frank sat perfectly still. On the charge of attempted murder of Frank Dawson, how do you find? Guilty. On the charge of attempted murder of Martha Dawson, how do you find? Guilty. The foreman continued. Guilty on every count. Elder abuse, conspiracy, criminal abandonment, all of it. Ethan sat motionless, his face blank, like he had already left his body and what remained was just an empty shell. Judge Cole thanked the jury, set sentencing for 2 weeks. Court adjourned. People swarmed Frank and Martha. Congratulations. Justice served. Well deserved. The words blurred together. Jake guided them through the crowd, out the back, into the truck. They drove home in silence. When they arrived, Frank and Martha went inside. Jake started to follow, but Frank stopped him. Give us some time, just the two of us. We need to process this. Jake nodded, walked to the guest house, sat on the small porch he had built, looked up at the stars. His phone rang. Wade Tucker. Jake, we have a situation. I need you to listen carefully and not panic. Jake's blood went cold. What kind of situation? Victor Kozlov, the loan shark Ethan owes money to. We have been monitoring his communications since the trial started. He just activated a hit team. When? Tonight. They are coming for Frank and Martha. Now. Jake was already moving, sprinting toward the main house. Why tonight? Why not before the trial to prevent testimony? Wade's voice was grim. Because Victor does not just want them dead. He wants revenge. Ethan's conviction means Victor never gets paid. $2.3 million gone. He waited for the guilty verdict so Frank and Martha would know justice was served. Then he is taking it away from them. Maximum psychological damage before the kill. Jake hit the porch, burst through the door. How long do we have? Security cameras picked up 3 vehicles. They just cut through the north fence. ETA to the house is 4 minutes. Backup is 20 minutes out. You are on your own until then. Understood. Jake hung up, looked at Frank and Martha standing in the living room, confusion on their faces. We need to move, now. Armed men incoming, Victor's people. Frank's expression hardened. Marine mode. He went to the bedroom, came out 30 seconds later with Martha and a rifle. How many? Frank asked. 3 vehicles, unknown number of shooters, maybe 6, maybe more. Then we go to the safe room. You have a safe room? Built it during the Cold War. My father was convinced the Russians were coming. Reinforced concrete, steel door, supplies for a week. This way. They moved to the kitchen. Frank pulled back a rug. Underneath was a trap door. He yanked it open. Stairs led down into darkness. Get Martha inside. I will cover the entrance. Frank, you are 74 years old with cracked ribs. You are not covering anything. This is my home, my land. I am not hiding while they take it. Outside, the sound of engines, tires on gravel, doors opening. Jake made a decision. Martha, get in the safe room. Lock it from inside. Do not open it for anyone except me or Frank. You understand? Martha nodded, descended the stairs. The door closed. The sound of a heavy bolt sliding into place. Jake looked at Frank. You have another rifle? Frank smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. It was the smile of a man who had been a sniper, who still remembered how to kill. Son, I have an arsenal. He led Jake to a closet, opened it. Inside were weapons, hunting rifles, shotguns, handguns, ammunition. My father believed in the Second Amendment, Frank said, and so do I. Jake grabbed a shotgun, 12 gauge, loaded. Frank took a scoped rifle, moved to a window, cracked it open. Outside, men were approaching the house. 6 of them, armed, moving with military precision. Professional killers. Frank's phone buzzed, a text from Wade. Backup en route. ETA 18 minutes, hold position. 18 minutes. Against 6 armed men. Jake and Frank exchanged looks. Semper Fi, Frank said. Semper Fi, Jake replied. The first man reached the porch, tried the door, locked. He stepped back, raised his weapon. Frank fired. Single shot. The man went down. Headshot, clean, professional. 47 confirmed kills in Vietnam. Frank had not forgotten how. The other 5 scattered, took cover behind vehicles, returned fire. Bullets punched through windows, splintered wood. Jake and Frank moved, staying low, returning fire. Controlled bursts. Jake's Marine training kicked in. Breathe, aim, squeeze. The shotgun roared. One shooter went down, then another. Frank was methodical, patient. Each shot counted. Each shot found its mark. But there were still 3 shooters, and they were closing in. Jake heard breaking glass from the back of the house. Someone coming through the window. He moved, shotgun up. A man appeared. Jake fired. Center mass, the man fell. 2 left. From outside, the sound of sirens. Backup arriving. The remaining shooters heard it too. Made a decision. Retreated. Engines roared. Tires spun. They were gone. Jake and Frank stayed in the position, weapons ready, until Wade Tucker burst through the door. Badge out, gun drawn. Clear, Jake said. Wade holstered his weapon, looked around at the carnage. 4 bodies, blood, broken glass. Jesus Christ, Wade said, you 2 just fought off a hit squad. We are Marines, Frank said simply. We do not go down easy. Backup flooded in. Paramedics, crime scene techs, more deputies. The ranch became a circus of flashing lights and yellow tape. Jake went to the safe room. Knocked. Martha, it is Jake. It is over. You are safe. The bolt slid back. The door opened. Martha emerged, saw the destruction, the blood. She walked straight to Frank. He wrapped his arms around her. They stood together in the ruins of their home. Again, Maria Rodriguez arrived an hour later. She surveyed the scene, interviewed Jake and Frank, identified the bodies. Russian mob, she said, connected to Viktor Kozlov. These men were sent to eliminate you as punishment for Ethan's conviction costing Viktor his money. Will there be charges, Jake asked, for shooting them? Are you kidding? This is Texas. You defended your home against armed intruders. You are heroes. She left to process the scene. Wade stayed. You cannot stay here tonight, he said. Crime scene needs to be preserved, and there is a chance more shooters are coming. Where do we go? Martha asked. Safe house. We have one set up. Secure location, armed guards. You will stay there until sentencing. After that, we will reassess. They packed bags, climbed into Wade's truck, drove away from the ranch. Jake looked back, saw the lights, the tape, the place where he and Frank had stood together and refused to break. They had survived the trial, survived the verdict, survived an assassination attempt. But the fight was not over yet. In 2 weeks, Ethan would be sentenced, and until then, they would remain targets, because justice had been served. But vengeance was still hunting. The safe house was a ranch-style home on the outskirts of Amarillo. Nondescript, beige siding, brown roof, the kind of place you could drive past 100 times and never notice, which was exactly the point. Armed guards rotated shifts, 2 outside, 2 inside, former military, all of them. They moved with the quiet efficiency of men who had done this before, who knew how to watch for threats without being obvious about it. Jake Morrison spent the first night pacing the small living room, unable to sleep, unable to settle. His body was still humming with adrenaline from the firefight. His hands still remembered the weight of the shotgun, the recoil, the way men fell when 12-gauge buckshot hit center mass. He had killed before, in Iraq, in combat, but that had been war. This was different. This was protecting a home, protecting people he cared about. It felt more personal, more real. Frank and Martha were in the master bedroom. Jake could hear them talking. Low voices, the sound of Martha crying. Frank's deeper tone trying to comfort her. Their home had been attacked. Again. The place they had built together. The land 4 generations of Dawsons had bled for. Twice now it had been violated. Twice they had been forced to defend it. How many times could you come back from that before something inside you broke permanently? Jake's phone buzzed, and text from his daughter Emily. Dad, I saw the news. Are you okay? Please call me. He stepped outside, past the guards, into the cool Texas night, called her. She answered on the first ring. Dad, oh my God, are you hurt? I'm fine, sweetheart, not a scratch. The news said there was a shootout, that armed men attacked the ranch, that you and Mr. Dawson fought them off. That is what happened, but it is over now. We are safe. Emily was crying. He could hear it in her breathing. You could have died, but I did not. I am right here, talking to you. Why are you even there? Why are you still in Texas with these people? This is not your fight, Dad. Jake looked up at the stars, the same stars that hung over the ranch, over Highway 287, over every place he had ever been and every place he would ever go. It became my fight the moment I stopped that truck, he said. I made a choice to stay, to help, and I do not regret it. Even if it gets you killed? Emily, I have been running my whole life, from your mother, from you and Brad, from myself. Running felt safe, but it was not living, it was just existing, waiting to die. He paused, chose his words carefully. Stopping for Frank and Martha, staying, fighting. That is the first time in 20 years I have felt alive, felt like my life meant something. Do you understand? Emily was quiet for a long moment. I think so. I am still scared for you, but I think I understand. They talked for another 20 minutes. About school, about her college applications, about Brad's football season, normal things, family things. When they hung up, Jake felt something he had not felt in years. Connected, present. Like maybe he had not completely failed as a father. Like maybe there was still time to build something with his kids. Something real. The next morning, Sheriff Wade Tucker arrived with news. The 4 men killed in the attack had been identified, all connected to Viktor Kozlov. Russian organized crime, the same people Ethan owed $2.3 million. Kozlov is in the wind, Wade said. Left the country 3 days ago, flew to Moscow. No extradition treaty, he is gone. So it is over, Martha asked. The immediate threat, yes, but Kozlov has people, associates, They might try again. So we keep you here until sentencing. After that, we reassess. Sentencing was scheduled for 1 week away. 7 days in this beige box. 7 days of waiting. Jake spent the time training. Push-ups, sit-ups, running the perimeter, keeping his body sharp, keeping his mind focused. Frank joined him, moving slower, still healing, but refusing to be idle. They ran together in the early morning, not talking, just moving. Two Marines doing what Marines do, staying ready, staying hard. On the fourth day, Martha asked Jake to sit with her. They sat on the small patio behind the safe house, coffee in hand, sun warming their faces. I want to thank you, Martha said, for everything, for stopping, for staying, for fighting for us. You do not need to thank me. Yes, I do, because you did not have to do any of it. You could have driven past, could have dropped us at the hospital and disappeared, could have walked away when things got dangerous. But you stayed, and that means everything. Jake sipped his coffee, did not know what to say. Frank told me about your family, Martha continued, about the divorce, the kids you do not see, the years on the road. He talks too much, Martha smiled. He likes you, trusts you. That is rare for Frank. He does not trust easily. I noticed. Do you know why? Vietnam? Partly, but also his father. Frank's father was hard, cruel sometimes. Believed that men did not show weakness, did not ask for help, did not admit when they were hurting. She looked out at the empty field beyond the fence. Frank learned to carry everything alone, to never let anyone see him struggle. It has been the blessing and curse of our marriage. He is strong, dependable, but he does not know how to accept help, does not know how to let people in. Until now, Jake said. Until you. You are the first person in 40 years Frank has let help him. Let's stand beside him. That is not nothing, Jake. That is family. We have known each other 3 months. Time does not make family. Choice does. You chose us. We choose you. That is family. Jake felt his throat tighten. I do not know how to be family. I failed my own. You did not fail them. You just got lost for a while. But you are finding your way back. Emily and Brad, they will see that. Give them time. They sat in silence, drinking coffee, watching the sun climb. And Jake thought about family, about blood and choice, about the difference between the two. Sentencing day arrived cold and gray. Winter coming early to the Texas Panhandle. The kind of morning where your breath hung in the air and the wind cut through your jacket like it was not even there. They drove to the courthouse in a convoy. Wade in front, 2 patrol cars behind, armed guards flanking Frank and Martha. The media circus had grown. National news now. Elderly couple attacked by children. Dramatic trial. Guilty verdict. Assassination attempt. It had everything. Violence, betrayal, redemption. Jake hated it. Hated the cameras. The microphones shoved in their faces. The questions shouted as they walked from the parking lot to the courthouse. Mr. Dawson, how do you feel about your son going to prison? Mrs. Dawson, do you plan to visit Ethan? Mr. Morrison, is it true you killed 4 men defending the Dawsons? Jake wanted to punch someone, wanted to clear a path with his fists, but he kept his face neutral, kept walking, got Frank and Martha inside safely. The courtroom was packed, every seat filled, people standing in the back. The bailiff had to turn away overflow. Judge Raymond Cole entered. The room stood, sat, the final act beginning. Ethan was brought in first. Orange jumpsuit, shackles. He looked smaller than Jake remembered. Diminished, like the trial had hollowed him out and left only a shell. Victoria was brought in separately. She would be sentenced today too. Her cooperation had earned her a plea deal, but she would still do time. Cole was not present. His probation had already been finalized. 2-year supervised release, mandatory counseling, community service. He was free. Judge Cole addressed the court, explained the sentencing process, the factors he would consider, the range of possible sentences. Then he called on the prosecution. Elena Vasquez stood. Your Honor, the state recommends life in prison without possibility of parole for Ethan Dawson on the murder conviction. Consecutive sentences on the attempted murder charges. Total recommendation is 3 life sentences to run consecutively. 3 life sentences. Ethan would die in prison. There was no other outcome. Caldwell stood for the defense, made his final plea. Mental illness, childhood trauma, remorse, all the arguments that had failed at trial. Judge Cole listened without expression. Then he called Frank Dawson to give a victim impact statement. Frank stood, walked to the podium. He had notes but did not look at them, just stared straight ahead, at nothing, at everything. When he spoke, his voice carried through the silent courtroom. I am a Marine. I fought in Vietnam. I killed men in combat, 47 confirmed kills. I remember every single one, their faces the moment they fell. I carry that weight every day. He paused, breathed. But I killed those men in war, for my country, for my brothers. And even then, even knowing it was necessary, it broke something inside me. Something I spent decades trying to fix. Another pause. My son killed his wife for money, tried to kill me and my wife for money. He did not kill for honor, not for country, not for anything noble. He killed for greed. Frank looked directly at Ethan. I raised you. I loved you. I gave you everything I had, and you became a murderer. That is on you, not me, not your mother. You chose this. You chose money over humanity, and now you will pay for that choice. Frank's voice cracked slightly. I do not forgive you. I will not visit you in prison. I will not write you letters or accept your calls. As of this moment, you are dead to me, just as dead as Rebecca, just as dead as you tried to make me and your mother. He looked at Judge Cole. Your Honor, I do not want the death penalty for my son, not because he deserves mercy, but because I will not be responsible for his death. I will not carry that weight along with everything else. Let him live. Let him spend every day for the rest of his life knowing what he did, knowing what he lost. That is punishment enough. Frank returned to his seat. The courtroom was silent. Judge Cole nodded, made notes. Then he looked at Ethan. Mr. Dawson, do you have anything to say before I impose sentence? Ethan stood. His lawyer tried to stop him. Ethan shook him off. I am sorry, Ethan said. His voice was hollow, empty. I know that is not enough. I know sorry does not fix anything. But it is all I have left. He looked at Frank and Martha. I do not expect you to forgive me. I do not deserve forgiveness. I just want you to know that I loved you. I still love you, and every day for the rest of my life, I will regret what I did. He sat down, put his head in his hands. Judge Cole took a breath. When he spoke, his voice was hard, unforgiving. Mr. Dawson, I am a Vietnam veteran. I served with men like your father. Good men, honorable men. Men who sacrificed everything for this country and asked for nothing in return. He leaned forward. You are the opposite of those men. You are a coward and a murderer. You killed your wife. You tried to kill your parents, and you did it for the most pathetic reason imaginable: money. The judge shuffled papers. On the charge of first-degree murder of Rebecca Dawson, I sentence you to life in prison without possibility of parole. On the charge of attempted murder of Frank Dawson, I sentence you to life in prison without possibility of parole, to run consecutive to the first sentence. On the charge of attempted murder of Martha Dawson, I sentence you to life in prison without possibility of parole, to run consecutive to the previous sentences. He looked up. You will die in prison, Mr. Dawson. You will never see the outside world again. You will never feel grass under your feet or sun on your face. You will spend every remaining day of your life in a concrete box, and you will have no one to blame but yourself. The gavel came down. Final. Absolute. Ethan was led away. He did not look back. Victoria was sentenced next, 5 years in state prison, eligible for parole after 3 with good behavior. She cried through the entire proceeding, asked to speak to Frank and Martha. They refused. When it was over, when the courtroom emptied and the media dispersed and the circus moved on to the next tragedy, Jake drove Frank and Martha back to the safe house. They did not speak. There was nothing left to say. Justice had been served. Their son would die in prison. Their daughter would spend years behind bars. Their youngest son was broken and trying to rebuild. And Frank and Martha were left with the ashes of their family, trying to figure out how to live with what remained. 6 months passed. Winter gave way to spring. The ranch was released from evidence hold. Repairs were made, bullet holes patched, bloodstains removed, windows replaced. Jake moved back into the guest house, finished the last of the renovations, made it truly livable. His home now, not temporary, not borrowed, his. Frank and Martha returned to the main house. It was harder than they expected. Every room held memories now, before and after, the family that had been and the family that was destroyed. But they pushed through, painted walls, rearranged furniture, slowly reclaimed their space. Jake helped, spent his days working the ranch, learning cattle management from Frank, learning the rhythms of the land, the seasons, the work that never ended but brought its own satisfaction. In the evenings, the three of them ate dinner together. A routine now, family dinners, talking about the day, about the work, about everything except the trial and the violence and the children who were gone. One evening, Jake's phone rang. Emily, Dad, I got accepted. University of Texas, veterinary program, full scholarship. Jake felt pride swell in his chest. Emily, that is incredible. I am so proud of you. I want you to come to graduation. Please, it is in 2 weeks. Will you be there? I will be there, I promise. Brad wants to see you too. He has been talking about visiting you in Texas, meeting the people you have been helping. He can come anytime. You both can. There is room here. They talked for an hour, made plans, rebuilt bridges that had been burned for too long. When Jake hung up, Frank was watching him from the porch. Your kids? Frank asked. Yeah, Emily got into vet school, wants me at graduation. You going to go? I am. 2 weeks. I will fly to California, be gone maybe 4 days. Frank nodded. Good, family's important, even when it is hard, especially when it is hard. Jake sat beside him. What about your family? Cole has been trying to call, leaving messages. Frank's jaw tightened. I do not know what to say to him. Maybe start with hello. He helped them. He stood by while they beat us, while they loaded us into that car. He also recorded it, gave the evidence that put Ethan away. Maybe that counts for something. Frank was quiet for a long time. Maybe. A week later, Cole showed up at the ranch, unannounced, driving a beat-up Ford Ranger. He parked in the driveway, sat there for 10 minutes, working up courage. Finally, he climbed out, walked toward the house. Frank was on the porch, Jake beside him. They watched Cole approach. Cole stopped at the bottom of the steps, looked up at his father. I do not expect you to forgive me, Cole said. His voice shook. I just wanted you to know that I am sober. 18 months now. I have a job, carpenter, building houses. I am trying to be better. Frank said nothing. I am in therapy, dealing with what I did not do. I know I cannot undo it, but I am trying to make sure I never become that person again. Still, Frank was silent. Cole's eyes filled with tears. I am sorry, Dad. I am so sorry. I was weak and scared and stupid, and I let them hurt you. I will never forgive myself for that. He turned to leave. Cole, Frank said. Cole stopped. You are sober, really sober. Yes, sir, 18 months. Meetings every day, sponsor, the whole program. Frank studied his youngest son, saw the shame, the regret, the desperate need for redemption. There is a veterans housing project starting up, Dawson Veterans Village. They need carpenters, good ones, pays decent. Are you interested? Cole stared at his father, disbelief on his face. You would give me a job after everything? I am not giving you anything. You have to earn it, show up on time, do good work, stay sober. Can you do that? Yes, sir, I can do that. Then be here Monday morning, 6 a.m. Do not be late. Cole nodded, unable to speak, turned and walked back to his truck. When he was gone, Martha came out onto the porch. That was kind of you, she said to Frank. It was not kind, it was pragmatic. The project needs workers, he needs purpose. Maybe working with his hands will keep him straight. And maybe you want to give your son a second chance. Frank did not answer, but Jake saw something in his face, something that might have been hope. Buried deep, fragile, but there. 18 months after the trial, the Dawson Ranch had transformed. The main house was fully restored. The guest house where Jake lived was immaculate. New barn, new fences, cattle thriving, and on the eastern 40 acres, construction was nearly complete on Dawson Veterans Village. 20 small homes, single family, designed for disabled veterans who had nowhere else to go, subsidized rent, community support, a place to rebuild. Frank had donated the land and funded the construction, used the life insurance money from his parents. Money that was supposed to go to his children. Instead, it went to creating something good, something that would last. Cole had worked on the project for 16 months, showed up every day, sober, reliable. His carpentry skills were excellent, his work ethic better. He and Frank did not talk much, but they worked side by side, building, creating, slowly finding a way to exist in the same space without the weight of the past crushing them. Victoria wrote letters from prison, monthly, Always the same. Apologies, regret, desperate pleas for contact. Martha read them. Frank did not. They sat in a drawer, unopened, a decision deferred. On a Saturday in late spring, Jake's kids came to visit. Emily and Brad. They drove from California, spent a week at the ranch. Frank and Martha welcomed them like grandchildren, showed them the land, taught them to ride horses, fed them until they could not eat another bite. Jake watched his children laugh with Frank, saw them relax, open up, become kids again instead of the wounded teenagers carrying resentment like armor. One evening, Brad asked Frank about Vietnam. Frank had never talked about it, not to Jake, not to anyone. But something about Brad's earnest face, his genuine curiosity, made Frank willing to try. They sat on the porch. Frank told stories, not the heroic ones, the real ones, about fear, about brothers lost, about coming home to a country that hated him for serving. Brad listened, asked good questions, treated Frank with respect. At the end, Brad said, "I still want to join the Marines after high school. Is that stupid?" Frank looked at him for a long moment. "It is not stupid. It is honorable. But go in with your eyes open. War changes you, sometimes for better, sometimes for worse, but always forever." Did it change you for better or worse? Frank glanced at Martha, at Jake, at the ranch around them. "Both," he said. "It broke me. Then it taught me how to rebuild. I am still rebuilding. Probably will be until the day I die." Was it worth it? Frank thought about that, about the men he had killed, about the brothers he had saved, about the decades of nightmares and the woman who had loved him through all of it. "Yes," he said finally, "it was worth it." On the final evening of their visit, Emily asked to speak to Jake alone. They walked to the guest house, sat on the small porch Jake had built. "I like it here," Emily said. "I like Frank and Martha. I like seeing you this way." "What way?" "Happy, or at least content. You were never content before. Always restless, always looking for the next thing, but here you seem settled." "I think I am." "Are you going to stay? Long term?" Jake looked out at the ranch, at the land Frank had fought so hard to keep, at the legacy 4 generations had built. "Yeah, I think I am." "What about us? Your family?" "You are my family, but so are they. I have room for both now." Emily leaned her head on his shoulder. "Good, because I like having a dad who is present, who answers his phone, who shows up. I will keep showing up, I promise." They sat together as the sun set, father and daughter rebuilding what had been broken, finding their way back to each other. The opening ceremony for Dawson Veterans Village happened on a clear June morning. Over 200 people attended. Veterans, community members, state officials, media. Frank stood at a podium, microphone feedback whining until someone adjusted it. He hated public speaking, always had, but this mattered. "This land has been in my family for 4 generations, Frank began. "My great-grandfather homesteaded it. My grandfather survived the Dust Bowl on it. My father raised cattle through the oil crashes. I rebuilt it after Vietnam." He paused, looked at the faces in the crowd. "I thought legacy meant passing it to my children, keeping it in the family. But I learned the hard way that blood does not make family. Choice does, values do, honor does." He gestured to the 20 houses behind him. "These homes will house veterans who have nowhere else to go, who served their country and came home broken, who need a place to heal, to rebuild, to remember who they were before war changed them." Frank's voice strengthened. "This is my legacy now. Not land passed to ungrateful children, but a community built for brothers and sisters who served. This is what the Dawson name will mean. Not wealth, not property, but service." The crowd applauded. Frank stepped down. Martha took his hand. They walked through the village together, met the first residents, shook hands, welcomed them home. Jake watched from the edge of the crowd, felt pride swell in his chest. This was what redemption looked like. Not erasing the past, but building over it, creating something good from the ruins of something terrible. That evening, after the ceremony ended and the guests departed, Jake drove Frank and Martha to Highway 287, to mile marker 104, the place where it all began. They stood on the shoulder, the same spot where Frank and Martha had waited to die, where Jake had made the choice to stop. Frank had brought a small memorial, a bronze plaque mounted on stone, simple, direct. It read, "In memory of all elders abandoned by family, may they find their true family, and in gratitude to those who stop when others drive past." They placed it at the exact spot, secured it to the ground. Then they stood together, 3 people who had been strangers, who had become family through choice and sacrifice and the willingness to stay when leaving would have been easier. "I have been thinking," Frank said, "about the ranch, about what happens when Martha and I are gone." "Do not talk like that," Martha said. "We are in our 70s. It is not morbid. It is practical." Frank looked at Jake. "I want you to have it, the ranch, all of it. When we are gone, it is yours." Jake shook his head. "Frank, I cannot accept that." "Why not? You have earned it. You saved our lives. You stayed. You fought. You rebuilt. You are family, and family inherits." "What about Cole? He is your son. He is working to make amends. Cole will have a place, a trophy, support, but the land needs someone who understands what it means, what it represents. That is you, Jake." Jake looked at Martha. She nodded, agreeing. "We already changed the will," Martha said. "You inherit the ranch. Cole gets a trust fund, enough to live on, to build a life, but the land is yours." Jake felt tears on his face, did not try to hide them. "I do not know what to say." "Say you will take care of it, preserve it, keep it for veterans who need it. That is all we ask." "I will, I promise." They stood together as the sun set, as the day ended and another night began. And Jake thought about legacy, about what we leave behind, about how the things we build with our hands matter less than the people we choose to stand beside. He thought about Danny Chen, about hesitation, about running. And he thought about the moment he hit the brakes on this highway. The choice that changed everything, not just for Frank and Martha, but for himself. Because in saving them, he had saved himself. In choosing to stay, he had finally found home. In standing with strangers, he had discovered family. They drove back to the ranch as stars emerged overhead, the same stars that had watched this land for millennia. That would keep watching long after everyone living on it now was dust. But for tonight, for this moment, three people who had found each other against all odds sat together on a porch in Texas and talked about ordinary things. The weather, the cattle, the repairs needed on the barn. Normal things, family things. The things that matter when the crisis ends and life continues and you realize that surviving is not enough. You have to build, you have to create, you have to stand for something. Frank and Martha had built a ranch, a legacy, a community. Jake had built a home, a family, a purpose. And together they had built something stronger than blood. They had built chosen family. The kind that does not abandon you when things get hard. The kind that stays. The kind that stops when others drive past. Years later, when people asked Jake Morrison why he had given up everything to help two strangers in Texas, he would think about that question. Really think about it. He would think about Highway 287, about heat and desperation and the choice to stop or keep driving. He would think about the lesson he had learned 3 decades earlier. That loyalty matters. That standing with people who need standing for defines who you are. He would think about Frank and Martha, about their courage, their resilience, their refusal to let betrayal destroy them. He would think about his kids, about rebuilding bridges, about being present. He would think about Cole, about redemption, about second chances. He would think about legacy, about the Dawson Ranch becoming a sanctuary for veterans, about 20 families finding home when they had nowhere else to go. And he would think about family, real family, the kind you choose, the kind you earn, the kind that lasts. Then he would smile and give the only answer that mattered, because it was right. And that would be enough, because in the end, that is all any of us can hope for. To do the right thing when it costs us something, to stop when others drive past, to stand with those who need standing for, to remember that the measure of a life is not what we accumulate, but who we become and what we leave behind. Frank Dawson died peacefully at age 81, heart attack in his sleep, Martha beside him, Jake holding his hand. His last words were to Jake, "You kept your promise. The ranch is in good hands." Martha lived 3 more years, died at 79, surrounded by the family she had chosen. Jake, Emily and Brad, Cole and his wife, grandchildren she had never expected to have. She was buried beside Frank on the ranch, under the sky they had loved, on the land they had fought for. The Dawson Ranch continues, 800 acres, cattle thriving, veterans village growing, 20 houses became 50, then 100. Jake Morrison runs it, with Emily's help when she can spare time from her veterinary practice, with Brad's help when he is home on leave from the Marines, with Cole's help every day. Sober now for 10 years, married, father of 2, foreman of the construction crews building new homes for veterans who have nowhere else to go. Victoria was released from prison after serving 4 years. She moved to Oregon, Started over, works at a women's shelter, helps survivors of domestic violence rebuild their lives. She writes to Jake sometimes, asks about the ranch, about Cole, about whether there might ever be room for her to come home. Jake always writes back, always leaves the door open. Family's complicated. Forgiveness takes time. Maybe someday. Ethan Dawson died in prison at age 62. Heart attack. Alone. No visitors in his final years. Jake did not attend the funeral. Neither did Cole. Neither did Victoria. Some bridges, once burned, cannot be rebuilt. But the legacy of the Dawson family is not Ethan. It is the ranch, the village, the hundreds of veterans who found home when they had nowhere else to go. It is Frank and Martha, who chose honor over blood, who built something that lasted. It is Jake Morrison, who stopped when 19 others drove past, who stayed when leaving would have been easier. It is chosen family, the kind that endures. And it is the lesson carried forward, that loyalty matters, that standing with people defines us, that we never leave our brothers behind. Not then, not now, not ever. And that makes all the difference.